Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. It is a special Tuesday night off-season edition of Brendan and Brandon because we've got a lot to talk about. There's a lot of stuff going on right now, and it's not for everybody. Not everybody's going to be into it, but for those of us who are into it, things are happening right now. It's all about this draft. It's all about the NFL draft, and tonight we are congregating to discuss the running backs of this upcoming 2024 draft. How you doing tonight, Brandon?
I'm doing great, man. This is second Christmas season for me. So I'm just unwrapping potential gifts here. Is it going to be this one? Is it going to be the PlayStation? Is it going to be the Xbox? I don't know.
It's like, do you remember when you were a kid, they had like the Sears catalog and your parents might give you the Sears catalog and be like, just circle the things you want. They had like a holiday guide every year.
Oh yeah.
Be like, this.
And you had to flip through it to get to the good stuff most of the time. It wasn't like
Yeah.
the good stuff was right on the front end. You were flipping through that thing like, no. But when you found something good, you're like, 2 circles means I really want it. Okay, Santa.
Yeah. No one in chat knows what Sears is anymore, by the way.
I know.
Yeah.
This is my problem right now. Is a lot of my references that I'm having to throw away that I used to love. My phone booth reference. I've had to toss that one out. I loved that reference. I use that at every chance I want, every chance I could. Now I'm like, closet.
Yeah, I watched a stream of a guy going into a Sears in I think it was Renton recently, and like 90% of the store is closed off by yellow caution tape. Everything's just kind of gathered up near the front, and the whole rest of the building's just not being used. It's like something out of a horror movie.
Same. I see something similar out here at the malls where I'm at, where you go out there and whether it's a Sears Bond kind of place, you can just feel how everything's very thinly stocked. It's like, oh, there's 3 shirts, 2 extra larges and 1 super small on everything. This is weird.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to talk about running backs tonight, a position where the Seahawks could use a little bit of a push in the right direction. I'm not going to go too crazy about it. We all love K9. I think we're all intrigued by Charbonnet and McIntosh. We like what we got, but usually teams carry a 4th running back, and right now I feel like we could maybe use a little bit more at that 4th running back spot, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. I do. Yeah. I think it's especially considering you might have to make a decision moving into next year with Walker as far as his contract situation goes after the season.
Right. So we've got a lot of running backs to get through here. I will admit there's not a lot of stud power in this running back class. There's no Bijan, there's no Jahmyr Gibbs, there's nothing like that. But that's not such a bad thing for a team that just needs a 4th running back, right? There's nothing wrong with that for us.
You can make the argument, Brendan, that maybe this was a little bit of what instructed John Schneider to make the selection of Zach Charbonnet last year, and that he was looking ahead a little bit to this future year's draft class and going, yeah, I know we just took Walker the previous year, but boy, that next year's class, if I don't get a guy now, I'm going to be picking through some stuff that's not as great. It's not bad. There's some solid quality in here, but not star power. I think, would you say Charbonnet would probably be the first running back off the board this year?
He would be in my top 2 for sure. He would definitely be in my top 2. I'll say that much. I don't know about top 1, but he would be right there. And, I'm thinking about when was the last time we had a running back crop that was this lackluster at the top? And I can't think of another class where we may not have a single running back go in the first 2 rounds and it wouldn't be that shocking. That it feels like it's possible this year.
It's very much possible, especially with the way the value of the position seems to always kind of have a little bit of a steady tilt downwards. It's bounced back a little bit this offseason with those guys getting some contracts, but we'll see if that holds true to this year, Brendan. I agree with you. I think that it is a little bit of a down year for the position, and unusually so. And then I do think you'll see a couple guys take in the 2nd round because the need will end up winning out on that. But it doesn't mean that if we're just taking it from a sure, is there a guy here that deserves to go here in the 2nd round? Part of it, everything in kind of a vacuum. Should there be one of these prospects? Maybe not, to your point.
Right. First, though, we did get a little bit of breaking news from the Seahawks earlier today. They're not done. They're making moves. They're still spending money. They're still making things happen. they're not going to let us just hibernate until the draft. They're going to keep us engaged until the draft gets here, you know?
That's right. That's right. Everything always there's something going on with the Hawks, man.
Yeah, and I think this is actually pretty interesting. They signed wide receiver slash kickoff returner, and that second part might actually be more interesting than the first part. Laviska Shenault Jr., formerly of the Jacksonville Jaguars, Carolina Panthers, former second-round pick from the Colorado Buffaloes. So I remember looking at this guy a little bit in the draft that year. Do you remember Shenault in that draft class?
I do. Yeah, in fact, I want to say that this was a guy that we talked about a little bit. Do you recall that? Like we might have had some discussions. I sometimes recall when we started to talk about these guys coming to Seattle that there were points or times that we had at one point or another discussed him and the prospects coming up out of that draft.
I imagine so, because he was right in that same kind of range where we eventually did take a receiver in Eskridge. So
right. Yeah,
that
exactly.
was probably part of our conversations at some point.
Yeah, he was a guy that the ultimate gadget guy kind of receiver. While not necessarily fitting into a prototype of being a small guy, or kind of, I guess, more into like a little bit of a smaller Cordero Patterson kind of guy, where looking out at him coming out, to me, it was more about just get this guy touches, get him, the ball in space and let him go. I never thought there was really going to be an upside with him in developing as a receiver to what you were just talking about a second ago. And he gave you also really good return ability. He is really got that stop and start ability where he can go from 100 miles an hour down to 0, back up to 100 miles an hour in 2 steps. And so he's got that kind of explosiveness to him. He's not maybe got like the pure top end speed of a Patterson, who ran like a 4.37, I think, coming out of Tennessee, but he's in the range. He's probably a 4.5 guy, I think 4.4 or 5 guy, something like that coming out. So like you said, this is really more about the kick return role. Maybe they're even looking at him I've been thinking about this, Brendan. Are they looking at maybe going, hey, with this 4th running back role, because we already wanted anyway to be a guy that's a kick returner or a punt returner, what if we just move this guy into our 4th running back? And is that not what Atlanta did with Cordero Patterson? Because you had Patterson for years where teams were sort of flirting with the thought process of moving him to running back. And then finally Atlanta just sort of bought into the process and said, okay, sure, let's just go full time with him out there and see what he can do. And he really excelled in that role when they did. Maybe Seattle's looking at doing something similar here with Laviska.
Yeah, I could see that. He's like he's got some Debo-like qualities, and we know Debo gets lined up in the backfield fairly often here. And you look at his career going back to college and the NFL, he averages like 1 carry a game as a receiver. So kind of makes sense that there would be something brewing there where he might end up occupying that kind of a role. So I could see things going that way. Some people were trying to intimate that this might have some kind of a effect at the top of the depth chart on guys like Metcalf and Lockett, suggesting that maybe this is a signing to help replace those guys because they're going to get traded. I don't really see that happening. I do wonder if maybe it could have an effect on Eskridge, like maybe one of those 2 guys will make the team and they don't know who yet, and they're going to let them figure it out in July and August. I could see that maybe. Remember, you get the 90-man rosters, so you're going to carry a ton of guys in the preseason and then trim down to 53 at the end. So I could see that. Apparently, because of the new kickoff return rules, there are going to be 2 kick returners instead of just 1 back there. So maybe you'd have Eskridge on one side, Shenault on the other side. I don't know exactly how it's going to work out, but there's some different ways this can all slot together.
Yeah, it's an interesting one though too, because you also look at the roster counts and how they have to run that with 5 receivers. And okay, Eskridge, I can get where people are starting to look at the math a little bit with that. I still, like you, do not believe that the Lockett DK trade thing is a really even a vague possibility at this point. Lockett would have been the guy to potentially, if we were walking into the draft, for that to occur, but the restructure of his salary would seem to indicate that that's not going to be the case here and how this is going to roll out, unless there's some background agreement between him and the Hawks, which I just don't see any kind of sparks of that. I think your other point is probably the more right one here, where it's competition for Eskridge. But then you bring up the final good point about this, which is it that have both of those guys in the roster, which, okay, that's all right. But DK, JSN, Tyler, Bobo, And now we get to Eskridge as the 5th, and then Shenault becomes the 6th. Now, does this inform us that they're going to run with just 2 tight ends? Do they go lighter at another positional group because of that? It brings up some interesting angles to this as far as how they're looking to maybe play it because of this 2 returner thing. I would tend to think it's really competition at the end of the day. They'll have a guy back there who Kenny McIntosh, they'll throw him back there with somebody and call it a day with it. So with Eskridge, I mean, I think it's more competition for Eskridge as a bottom line.
Yeah, they're different. Like they could do the 3 running back thing, like you said, and have Shenault be the quote unquote 4th running back. They could carry 9 offensive linemen. They could carry less than the typical number of inside linebackers. There are a few different ways to play it. But the thing with Shenault is that he doesn't do punt returns. So he's not offering the true flexibility of a guy who can do receiver, kick, and punt stuff. So if that were the case, I'd say there's more room for him. But as it stands, just kick returns, I don't know if that can buy you a 53-man spot.
If I was Seattle, I would just move him to the 4th running back role. You can see with his yard per carry average as a running back, even though, like you said, it's basically it's another one of those things where you have a guy who does something really well, but they don't do like what we told him to do coming out. And when I look at his number of carries over the year with Shenault, Brendan, when you drafted him, I think we literally had this conversation at the time he came out. It was, you have to manufacture those touches. And part of the manufacturing of touches is handing him off the ball sometimes out of those traditional sets. And if I'm Seattle, I know that he can hold up as a 4th running back on the roster. I'm not going to ask him to be a starter in 20-25 carries any point through a year, but I can have him as a 4th running back there that gets a handful of carries throughout the year. And his real main duty is to be that special teams guy. The punt return thing is going to remain dicey because I'm not sure that Eskridge can do that either. I think that he doesn't have that in his bag, or at least a history doing that much in his bag. He's done kick return stuff, sure, but who's the guy on the roster at this point who can do it? And I don't have a good answer for that.
Yeah, did Kenny McIntosh do it at Georgia? I don't think he did.
I don't believe he did when we looked at that before. I want to say that that's a no.
Yeah, we're not going to have a punt returner. We're just going to let the ball roll every time. You got 11 men on the line to block the punt, and if they get the punt off, then good for them.
You're going to have to do something creative because, as we've seen, when you try to take one of these guys who've never done it and be like, hey, just learn it. No. They're not just going to learn it. You need a guy who's good at it. And so, but yeah, that's where I come back to. I think it's a Eskridge, Laviska thing. They get to duke it out here and let the best man win.
And Derek Young's probably in there as well. His job might be on the line here. He missed basically all of last season.
Oh,
so
certainly. He's got to come out there and he'll be in the mix too, no doubt about it. But I think what they want to make sure of is that they don't end up in a situation where it's Lockett, it's DK, it's JSN, and it's Bobo, and then you have no other kind of real yak guys in there to do much. JSN can do some yak stuff. I know some people like to proclaim DK can. If you go look at the actual yak data on DK, it's like he's 2.6 average on his yak after the catch, which is fairly low within the spectrum of the league. It's not bad. It's not like he's got some ability at times to go with the yak, especially when you give him a chance to catch a ball and go. But he's not going to, of course, juke around guys either on the other side of it. So having some guys that can do this part, especially for the fly sweep stuff and lean on that, you have a viable option there where it's gotten empty in recent years. The cupboard's gone bare.
We don't know what the contract is yet, by the way. I haven't seen any contract details. I'd assume it's veteran minimum because he had like 60 yards last year. Like, what kind of negotiations are there going to be there? So I'm assuming it's vet min, but haven't seen anything yet.
We're pretty much at the point where you're getting close to the vet minimum area, unless you're a last remaining top 5 free agent who's just not decided to sign for a long period of time. The money's pretty much gone across the board.
Yeah, Connor Williams, somebody like that.
Right. Clowney a couple week ago, with the 2-year 20.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I think that's about it for Shenault. We did get one super chat in here. Garth Knight, thank you for the $9.99. Brando, just wanted to apologize for being a wank in the chat the other night. I know you have bouncers, but I respect Megan as the cooler in Roadhouse terms. Regardless, I was 3 sheets to the wind.
I don't recall you being out of pocket, man. Everything was cool the other night to me, man. Mm-hmm. So it was all good.
Mm-hmm. Didn't they just make a new Roadhouse, by the way? I think I saw my dad watching it the other night.
Yeah, I've watched some clips on it, man. It does not have the charm and luster of the original there, And for some reason, Connor seems to the whole movie to have his elbows out in this stance the whole time. Yeah.
Okay, so probably not. Well, it is free on streaming, so you can just watch it at home, and if it's bad, you just turn it off.
Yeah, that's a good luck one on that one because I mean that original, it's not. I mean, look, it's not a classic cinema. It's a B movie, but it's a good B movie, and it's got its ambiance of its day to it. This one just doesn't seem to have any of that. It's kind of got
Yeah.
that little lifeless feel to it.
A lot of that going around lately.
Oh yes, oh yes.
All right. So now, if it sounds good to you, I say we swing on over to these running backs.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Let's get it.
Okay, so we're going to open it up here with, as of right now, the only running back that on the aggregate is in the top 2 rounds. There's one running back they have in the top 64 right now, and he barely made it. Barely made it. So there is no top with these running backs, and the middle is a little bit thin as well. But once you get down into the running backs that there are, you start to find some guys that are appealing. Like, for instance, I would say currently the number 1 running back in this class, Trey Benson. Trey Benson of the Florida State Seminoles. 6 feet flat, 216 pounds, pretty decent measurements overall. Had a real nice combine, speed, acceleration, pretty explosive with his broad jump, 10 foot 2 inches. Every big board I have has him in the top 100, and the aggregate has him 60th overall. 2 straight years of good production at Florida State. Not a ton of volume, but each of the last 2 years, he's had about 1,200 yards of offense, approximately 1,100, 1,200 yards. So the production's good. What are you seeing with Trey Benson of the Seminoles?
I think that he is. My comp for him is 92% of Todd Gurley. I think that when you look at his gait and the way that he runs, he's got that smooth gliding kind of style as a running back. That's very reminiscent to me of Gurley, with also that explosiveness that builds up where you get him up to the open field, and that 4.39 let loose with 2:15 running, and guys will slide off of him tackle wise, not because he's breaking the tackles, but just because they're coming at him from the side, and it's that guy creating that explosive power with just how fast he is in the open field. And it just very reminiscent to me of Todd, where it's just he'll glide out there off the edge, especially those outside zone runs, wait out his path, let everything set up, put his foot in the dirt, get downhill, not mess about at that point, not doing anything extra. He's just going to take it downhill at you, but he's very fast, and he can take advantage of that burst of speed in a really nice way where it's legit 216, where a lot of times we see these guys, Brendan, at 4.39, 152. They'll tend to be the running backs around 190, 195, where this guy's got that extra 20 pounds now to where it makes a big difference when that guy gets loose coming up and trying to tackle those guys, especially these hip tackles taken out now, Brandon. This guy maybe is the type of guy that gains more value in that because it's only going to make him harder to bring down to the ground. I also think he's legitimately fast on the field, hit 22 miles per hour this year on the GPS trackers. That's DK Metcalf speed. So this guy is legit fast in that respect. And I think that's one of the things that'll help really, I think, end up landing him at least into the second round. But my favorite back of the draft, I think he has starter potential. I do think that it would be very tough for me between him and Charbonnet, between going for him, because the thing I do like about Charbonnet is Charbonnet can create on his own. This guy needs the help to have it created. He's going to need those lanes. There's backs like this in this draft where if you give them the hole, they can be powerful and damaging, Brendan. But then there's other backs there on the verse side. If it's not there, he'll get you absolutely nothing. He's not going to take that negative 3-yard play and turn it into a beautiful 1-yard gain. It's a lot of, it's got to be there for me to go get it. But if I'll get it if it's there.
Yeah, that's kind of what I found as well. I don't think his vision is everything that it needs to be. I think that his vision needs to improve a little bit. I think he's a little bit of a dancer sometimes, little indecisive. But these are things that can be fixed for the most part, I think. Those are things that can get better. I like the route running ability that he brings as a receiver. I think he does offer that dimension to his game. I like his contact balance. He gets low to maintain balance when he gets hit, which I love. And there's not a lot of wear and tear on his body because Florida State never overworked him. They never gave him the ball like 350 times. They just kind of, gave him the ball a healthy number of times, right?
Yeah.
So I like that.
I do too.
Needs to improve pass protection. Can't really say he's a third down back yet until he becomes a better blitz what's the phrase? Blitz picker upper. I don't think that's a phrase, but it should be.
Yeah,
Needs to work on that.
We need a shorthand phrase for it.
So the combination of size, speed, agility, explosiveness, it's easy to be into it. And I do think he should be a late second round pick. That is where I put him in this draft. And because of the scarcity of studs at the position this year, I might even be okay bumping him up to like mid-second, because this is the best you got. This is the best we got this draft for sure.
I do think he gets taken probably middle second because of the scarcity situation. It goes outside the due talents versus what also is there. Because in this draft, if you don't get the running back that can be impactful early, you may be having to kind of put a couple guys together to make it happen later in the draft with some skill sets.
Yeah, I don't think he gets past like Dallas. Like if Dallas is there in the second round and Benson's there, I think they jump on that. I think their starting running back might end up being Zeke Elliott as of right now, if assuming they sign him. That's not going to hold.
Agreed. I think there's too many teams there in that middle point of that second round, especially, that would be just laying kind of low, ready to jump on that at that value.
Okay, so that's Trey Benson. We both agree best running back in this class. Yeah. So next up, we have a guy who has kind of started to carve out a position as the number 2 back in this draft. I don't know if it's going to hold. It's a little bit of a tough thing with this guy because we have such a small sample size to go on. It's Jonathan Brooks of Texas. Yeah. Small sample size here. Did not test at the combine, by the way, because I think he's still hurt, right? He pretty big injury in November, and he's still not all the way there. So we got that going on. He has one season of big production at Texas, and it was a good year. Don't get me wrong. Like 1,400 yards from scrimmage, 10 touchdowns, 25 catches. Every big board has him in the top 100, and the aggregate puts him in the early third. But we're not working with a whole lot of evidence here one way or the other. So how do you feel about Jonathan Brooks right now?
Well, I think with both Brooks and the other Texas running back in this draft that we'll be talking about later on here in the show, do need to be given a measure, I think, of understanding about the position they've dealt with as far as being stacked up on the depth chart. Because if you were not able to unseat a top 10 running back selected in last year's draft, is that a black mark on your record? I mean, it's just like, well, I wasn't the superstar running back. I wasn't as good as him, and even then you have Marshawn Johnson behind Bijan Robinson, who was also, I think, taken second, third, fourth round, something like that himself. So it was going to be hard for these two backs to find room onto the football field, considering as well with Brooks, Brendan, he's 21 years old. So he was an incredibly young man at the same point in time that he was stacked on the depth chart behind these guys. Now, he is a long-legged running back. He's got a little sprinkle of vision, burst, sharp cuts, very active feet near the line of scrimmage. He's got some fun skill set as far as getting, I think, straightforward up the field and with a little bit of like the 1-step, 2-step bounce to the left or right where he can, I got penetration in the hole. Let me bounce 2 steps to the right, find a little bit of clearance and get upfield. He reminds me in that way a little bit of a DeMarco Murray, former Dallas Cowboy running back a little bit. He's got a little bit of that same kind of upright style to him, just a little bit, not full upright, but a little bit of a slight upright lean, I guess, a little bit to him. But yeah, there was the 1 year production is, I think, worrisome. I think the burst is legit. I think he's probably a 1.53, 1.52 kind of burst guy, but he's also probably a 4.5-ish 40 guy, right? So not a 4.37 like Benson guy, but more into that, it's going to be a little bit slower as far as you can catch back up to him. The other thing that stands out to me that was a little bit problematic for me, Brendan, and I don't know if you saw the same, but I felt like sometimes outside of those 2-step bounces that he can kind of do, where it's bump, bump, if he's got to get real wide and turn lateral off of a change of direction moment, those hips, the hips swinging on his gait, it's like a 6'4" guy. He's a 6-foot guy that kind of moves laterally than like a 6'4" guy when he's got to really, to me, change direction off of that. And I thought that stood out a little bit as a problematic for me with him as a running back. Still a good prospect. And with me, those guys that are 20, 21 years old that are so young coming to these drafts, we got to look at them in a kind of particular light for their upside. But I do acknowledge you should probably be a late second, third round guy, but not a clean. It wasn't as clean for me as like oh, I know he'll be there's a little bit of bust factor there with this guy.
Yeah. More than one draft analysis website that I've seen has compared him to Jamal Charles. Would you say that's just lazy evaluation because he wears the same jersey as Jamal Charles, or do you see it?
Didn't Jamal go to Texas too?
Yeah, exactly. That's why people are like, we know this sounds lazy, but he makes me think Jamal Charles.
I slay that, and I don't remember where DeMarco Murray went to college. So
Oklahoma.
Okay. So I'm not out of pocket on that one. No.
Yeah.
No, I don't see it at all. Jamal Charles was change of direction. If Jamal Charles needed to stop and get lateral with his vision, especially in the open field, that's exactly what he could do. That's the thing with this guy that I don't think he can do as much. I think his lateral has to happen at the time of where before he's gotten to build up speed. He's got to be at the line of scrimmage and he can get a little lateral there. But if he's getting in the open field now and he's got to redirect back through here laterally, or, he's going up the field and pursuits here and I've got to change back direction quick or bounce quickly, going full speed. I didn't see that as much. And that's something Jamal could do. He's running with you full speed. And all of a sudden he does that little hop move and you're gliding this way and he's gliding past you that way. And then he's right back up to speed. So I can't see that comp myself there.
Yeah. It's just one of those comps you can't get away from because he kind of looks like him. He's wearing the same college jersey.
He's got the dread thing he's coming out.
Yeah, it's very Jamal Charles-like. We got Jamal Charles at home.
Yeah. I can't see it on that one.
But I think he'll be a good receiver in the NFL. He's got good field vision. I like his acceleration. Not a very good blocker. That's another thing that I kind of highlighted. A lot of these backs, not great blockers, by the way. Lost art.
Yes, it's been definitely going away. That's for sure. A lot of them. I find myself putting that note over again and again.
Yeah. But I do feel like he's going to be like one of those really fun playmakers at the NFL level. He'll be like, remember Jarius Norwood? Like he didn't last very long, but somebody like that, or somebody like a Darren Sproles, somebody not like Darren Sproles, but the same kind of exciting playmaker who doesn't do it every time, but he does it enough to where there's a place for him in the league. I said early third round feels appropriate.
Yeah. I got him myself in the second just because of that. I mean, just turning 21 years old this July. So he's going to start the NFL season at that age. I look at that and go, man, there's still a grown man body he's going to grow into. We haven't seen the upside. And this is with my issues with him and the lateral stuff. There is some good, clean parts to his game. Like you said, he can receive a little bit and he's got burst going straight forward. That's legit. So I do go late second again with him, but it's right in that fringe area of third round. I wouldn't take him high, middle. It would be at the back end if I did.
I had a couple super chats here. Kevin Mullen, thank you for the $9.99. Draft scenario. Through trade downs, Hawks own 49, 80, 81, 87. For fun, each host can only side one side of the ball, offense versus defense only. You two decide who's on what side of the ball. Love the show. So you trade down, so you get 3 picks in the third round and then the 1 second round pick. Each host can only side one side of the ball, I'm assuming. I mean, it might be a fun thought exercise, but I certainly wouldn't want the team to play such extreme favorites with the draft in that way.
Yeah, I mean, we can give you some names on that, but I echo Kevin with a little bit of what Brendan would say on this, where it's you do want to just see which players fall to you, because we can have a guy in like my horizontal board that I pick out that's third round rated, but they're indeed maybe very well second round guys that dip down into the third round they're there to be grabbed at that point, which would stand out. I'm a little confused on the exercise too. Is it like you're picking at 49, I'm picking at 80, and you're picking defense, I'm picking offense?
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused by it as well. But I have played with the idea of trading way down and not having a pick until like past the top 40. I don't think it's bad either, because I think you've said this before, there are only 10 true blue chippers in this draft, and we're probably not going to be able to get any of them.
Yeah, I think indeed you're right now with the first and the third, so you have 2 picks basically in the honey spot of this draft. And after you've traded back that third to the fourth round, chances are that pick was going to be at the back end anyway, but it's definitely removes you now from that. So you'd like to get some more picks in that area. If we can maximize that selection, Kevin, that's definitely been a drive for me to do so, because I think the value will be there. I think that's where the strength is of this draft, is in tier 2. And I think it does last even up into that 90 on up. I think it goes through 3 rounds legitimately, especially if you're drafting for value and not need. But it is hard. I think you're going to look at more than, I guess, players, Kevin. I think that you're looking to likely target in there. Definitely offensive line would probably get hit twice in 2 of those picks. I would estimate middle linebacker would get hit with one of those picks somewhere in there in general terms. Safety maybe as well. But as Brendan said at the top of this, Kevin, it's tough because so much of what drives, I think, the Seahawks drafting strategy, especially because it's been so successful recently, is operating from pure value, which if you're talking about, well, who would you take here? Who would you take there? It's like, well, who's going to be available? Who's sitting at the top of my board that slid down?
Let's see here. Garth Knight, thank you for the $4.99. The only person who can fix California is Snake Plissken, and the government will only allow him 23 hours.
Thanks again to Kevin on the other side. I didn't say thanks for that. Thanks for the don't know. Maybe that might be a little bit. Snake do that Snake did that in the sequel, Garth.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's. I only saw the first one, so I don't know. I only saw the first one.
I think the second one ends though in Armageddon, so he fixes it, but technically everything's about to go back to the Stone Age at the end of the second one. So spoiler alert.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't worry too much about that one.
Yeah.
I don't remember the first one that well. That was a weird movie.
It's a good movie, man. It was awesome back in the day watching it growing up. I know the graphics look super simplistic right now, but they looked futuristic at the time, with all those DOS blinking screens and stuff, and such a dark plot as it kind of was with it. But good movie, man. Good movie. Yeah. Classic character. Hell, video game came out of it, and sequel wasn't as good. It was definitely, he ends up, I think, riding a surfboard on a river. It's got some jump the shark moments for sure in that one, but character's
can't
still
be
cool.
helped. Can't be helped.
Can't be helped, man. Carpenter lost his touch. What are you gonna do?
Zen Lunatic, thank you for the $10. I'm shocked you didn't start the show discussing Brendan's excellent and well-reasoned argument on why we need to bring Pete back. Yeah, so this is about the April Fool's video I put up yesterday morning.
Okay.
Yeah, I brought out the bag again. I still have the bag, and I changed the F in fire into an H for hire, and I decided to have a little bit of fun.
Nice.
And some people don't have a sense of humor. I found I've discovered that on the internet. So I'm shocked at how many people don't look at. I guess they don't have a calendar. They don't look at the calendar and they realize I'm joking around, or they know I'm joking around, but they don't appreciate it. Every time I try to make a joke video like that, I'm surprised at the admittedly small subset of people that are just not in the mood for humor from their football YouTube channel.
No, I agree with you. It's sometimes, especially, you also get the other thing on the offending side where people take offense where you're just trying to make a little offhanded joke and they're like, oh, you said this thing. It's like, it was a throwaway joke, Yeah, it's like, I don't think there's much to discuss there. I made some really good points that cannot possibly be refuted. Yeah. Bring him back. Bring him back.
It's going to start when the season starts. We're going to start 5-0. We're going to go 5-1 after a overtime loss to the I don't know, the Kansas City Chiefs or something, and then they're going to start the chance on X.
Oh, I already know the first loss of the season for McDonald is they're going to be sitting there first score given up. See, this is what happens when Pete goes. It's going to be in my comments. I know it's coming, so yeah. I've prepared myself. I'm ready for the storm. But, just got to stand strong, do it. Just got to stand tall.
All right. So this next guy, probably the most prolific of the college running backs this year, certainly the most decorated. He's been putting up numbers, been putting up stats, been getting national attention. He won a national title. He's done a lot of stuff over the last couple of years, really. I mean, he's lost 2 games in the last 3 years of his career. It's Blake Corum. No running backs gotten more attention than him. And he probably will be a top 100 pick, currently projected to go in about the third round. I do imagine he's going to go somewhere in that top 100. Going to be 23 when the season starts. Smaller guy, 5'8", 205 pounds. Combine was okay. The thing that stands out with his combine was his short area change of direction. His three cone was really good. His 20-yard shuttle was really good. Bench press, he cranked out a lot on the bench press. But what do you see from Blake Corum once he hits the pros?
We were just talking about a guy in Jonathan Brooks that when he gets the open field, trying to make those lateral cuts or get lateral is really laborious for him. It is not the case with Blake Corum. That is his bread and butter, is essentially his ability to always at any point in time, no matter how fast he's running, get suddenly lateral and evade tacklers. He is very elusive as a running back because of this skill. It's a kind of bounce that he just incorporates it with a little bit of a jump cut as well, and it makes him very hard to just corral in the open field. You go here and he's over here, grab him here and he's popping over here, and it's tough. I think he's a little like Saquon Barkley if you took off 20 pounds 3 inches and 21 hundredths of a 40 time, right? Instead of 4.3 Barkley, you get 4.5 Blake Corum. And I think he's even probably a little slower than the 4.53 time he posted at the combine, Brendan. He's got burst, but his open field speed is just not there, in my opinion. He's a good back. Like Barkley, he's got that kind of somewhat of the bigger upper half with the smaller lower legs. And that's part of why he's able to get so lateral all the time, is that he doesn't have to pick him up and put him down to get him from point A to point B. But he's got some good open field moves as well, including a really nice spin move that he can turn out to get free off tackles and spin out a really strong lower half. And his real patented move for him is just balance overall as a back, Brendan. He's always balanced, always under control. It allows him to take the contact balance stuff and still keep his feet. But he's a very complete running back for the position too. He can catch, he can do some pass protection, even though he's a little bit of a smaller guy. I don't see him as a guy that's got a future as far as being a number one back in this league, but a guy that could certainly share the carries, provide that kind of counterbalance to a guy. I think he can definitely do that.
Yeah, I liked him more before I realized he's 5'8". I didn't think he was going to be that small. Like, I had him as my number one back for a little bit, but I did not think he was going to be that small. And while he's not a power back, powering through tackles is a part of his game. So I just wonder how much that's going to translate. He may have burst, but he didn't really show it at the combine. He had a very average 10-yard split, 1.58. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. I don't think his vision is great compared to some of these other players. Played on a team with loaded offensive linemen. Loaded. Like, I think every starting Michigan offensive lineman last year is going to get drafted.
Yes, I believe that's the case.
Now, none of them are superstars, granted, but they're all going to get drafted, I think.
No weak links.
And I do like the fact that he's good in pass protection. I like his ability to cut and go. He plants and goes with great urgency. Good pass catcher, like you said. Michigan didn't really use him that much like that, but he can do it. It's kind of like K9. K9 didn't catch a lot of passes, but he can do it. It's not that kind of a thing.
They just didn't need to.
Yeah. So I kind of ended up falling off this guy a little bit. I ended up saying 4th round.
Ooh.
I may bump him up to the 3rd round when I put together my big board and realize I can't find 100 guys better than him. But I cooled off on him a little bit. I did not think he was going to be 5'8".
Yeah, and add to the 5'8", 205 pounds. I mean, it wasn't even but 8 years ago we're looking at running backs going, the ideal is you'd like 225 at the position. So, you're 205 coming to the combine, and I think he probably plays a little heavier. Obviously, he was getting lighter to try to get that 40 time down as low as he possibly could. Which is why, again, I don't think he's at 4.5. He's more like just about a 4.6 guy in the field. So you got a 5'8", guy, football field wise, 205 pounds at 4'8". It's like, well, he does a lot of this and does a lot. Yeah, but he's those things. That's always going to be a thing that holds him back. And your point on his power is well taken. I don't think at 205 pounds, you're driving through NFL tacklers. Even if you've got some of that natural leverage ability with his low center of gravity and the low balance he's got to be able to kind of do some of that stuff. I just don't think it's going to be able to push through at the NFL level in that point. I still have him as a third round guy because he does have a pretty full skill set, and he has such a good understanding of the position, those sharp cuts that he makes. I call them scalpel-like cuts that he can make, where when he's deciding to go from one direction to the other direction, he can really change the pace on that in a way where I feel like he's going to be able to not need it to be blocked up 100%, like we're talking about like Brooks or Benson. Even he doesn't need it as cleanly blocked up as those guys do, which does have me at least keep him into that third round range. But admittedly, Brendan, I've got some of the concerns you do.
All right, so that was Blake Corum. Real quick here, we got another dono from Garth, $4.99. Thank you, Garth. Brendan, here's some money for that April Fool's joke in return of Pete. Good on you and the people who were fooled. Yeah, I mean, I think that when you see an internet April Fool's joke these days, you fall for it for about 2 seconds, and then you kind of catch yourself because, I mean, internet April Fool's jokes have been a thing for a long, long time now.
They have, and people have worked a variety of different angles, so it's very hard to fool people at this point because they've been fooled so many different times over.
I remember a handful of years ago, it was like Amazon would redesign their pages so they looked like they did in the 1990s. That was a good one. Like, it would be that hideous, even pre-HTML5 designs. It was great. I like that kind of stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah, YouTube, I think, did a thing where YouTube did one a few years ago that I thought was really good, but I can't remember what it was now. But yeah, this year there wasn't really a lot of that going on. I think they've run out of ideas.
Yeah, people have gotten creative, man. They've taken it to some nth degrees. So everybody's on their toes on that one now.
Right. So next running back here, another guy who is probably going to end up going in that third round area if I had to guess right now. This is a fun one. I like this one. It's Jaylen Wright of the Tennessee Volunteers. Fun little player, only 21. Only going to be 21 when the season starts. Very young. Decent size, about average size, I would say. Elite speed, 4.38 40. Really good vertical, off the walls, good broad jump. 11 feet 2 inches. He could go to the Olympics almost.
Just about, yeah.
Yeah. So Jaylen Wright, what are you seeing with the Tennessee Volunteer guy?
He's a fast back, gets downhill really fast. He doesn't mess about. He's not looking to make a lot of moves. He's looking to attack the hole and just get into the opening in the clear and then get to that fourth, fifth gear that he gets to so quickly that gives him true home run hitting potential from the position. Much of his running was out of the A and B gaps at times, out of read option runs, out of shotgun. I think that gives to me a little bit of extra bump to him on his upside of a team that'll start to maybe use him on more traditional NFL style looks, especially under center looks where he could really benefit from that, in my opinion. He is a big play machine when he was there. Granted, maybe not a ton of production there as far as a long track record, but 25% of his runs gained 10 yards or more. So he absolutely is a guy that to me just is going to be able to find space in the open field in the NFL. These kind of backs to me in the NFL, whether they become bell cow backs or not for you, Brendan, they will absolutely give you some big plays over the course of the game, over the course of a season. And I see this guy as being that kind of guy that can do it. You mentioned his age. There's room to grow there, I think. He's 22 catches the past year, so he's capable as a pass catcher. It's not a great thing in part of his game, but it's fine. They were heavily manufactured touches, so it's a lot of bubble screens and throws to the flats for him at that point. He's not going to give you a full assortment of moves. He's not a juke artist or anything like that. He's pretty much just get downhill and go, but some teams really love that in their backs. Some teams prefer that in the backs versus those guys that are the dancers and whatnot. So he's not very creative, but I think he's got good vision to find the hole. And I like backs that don't mess around, Brendan. That's especially in those zone heavy schemes. That's oftentimes what they're hammering in those backs' minds is just get downhill, north and south, north and south. And he does have a little bit of flashes to me of underrated power. I'm not saying he can lean on the power. He's not gonna be a driver, but there's times when he does get low behind his pads and he's able to push out a few extra yards in it that stood out to me too.
Yeah, so Jaylen Wright, what did I had he's got really good hands. I think his hands out of the backfield are going to be really good. I like that he does run with that little degree of power that you mentioned. I do agree with that. His top end speed is obviously elite. He does kind of play standing straight up, which means you crumple when you get hit. Like you don't have a low center of gravity. It's tough. So yeah, he does have a little bit of that going on. He's a fumbler. He fumbles a lot. Like it's a problem. He needs to do something about that. I don't feel like he needs to play in a straight line as much as he does. I think he does actually have some ability to make guys miss. He can be elusive. He just chooses not to. But I think that the final product with Jaylen Wright could be pretty special here. I would spend a third rounder on him, try to coach him up for a year. I think that some of the things that he's struggling with are things that can be fixed.
I wonder too. I do think he's got the running up high, which I wonder if maybe is a symptom of him trying to correct the fumbling issue. Because when you're fumbling, you're tending to get the ball out wide like this, and so then you get instructed by coaches to keep the thing tucked into your rib cage, which gives you that running style. That if you just think about it, if I'm leaning down, the more this arm's going to go out. The more I come up, the arm's going to stay tight into my ribs. I do think when he decides to go to his power, he does a good job of transitioning from that upright style to getting a bit of a forward lean, which is part of what I think helps him to get that power in those moments. But definitely there's some things to still get better and improve on with him. But when you're getting to me in the third round for a guy with, to me, some second round kind of traits to him from a skill set standpoint, especially considering his age, I think that's not bad value to have. I wouldn't expect the Seahawks to do it, but I mean, he's going to be, I think, a fun player in this league. Is he going to be a star? No, but is he going to be a very productive and efficient player for the touches you give him? I do believe so on that.
Okay, so now we've got a really fun one. This one's unique. This one's a little bit different than a lot of the guys that we look at. I'm excited for this one. However, wherever he ends up, I want to see how this goes. Braelon Allen of the Wisconsin Badgers. I don't know how this one's going to work out, but I'm intrigued to see it. First of all, he's only going to be 20 when the season starts. Very young. Very young. 235 pounds. 235 pounds. And I remember last year there was one running back in the draft. He was from Utah. I think his name was like Tavion Thomas or something.
Yes.
And he was 237. But he was kind of a joke because he wasn't really a running back. He was just a big guy that Utah used as a running back, and he didn't get drafted because obviously while he was big and that was cool, he didn't have running back traits. This guy actually has running back traits. This guy can do it. He's been very productive the last 2 years, averaging over almost 5.5 yards a carry, has somewhere around 2,300, 2,400 yards from scrimmage. There's some fun stuff here. Didn't test extraordinarily well, but you wouldn't really expect him to, right? You wouldn't really expect a guy this big to be able to jump 11 feet on a broad or anything like that. So what are you seeing with Braelon Allen?
I sure would like to have a 40 on him though, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, we know it's not going to be great, but it would be nice to know it's not like 4.9.
That's my concern with him, and I lead with that, Brendan, because that's a big concern for me at this point. I'd watched the tape a few different times, like you mentioned, going back to last year. I thought that we were going to be getting maybe a combination of a Leonard Fournette and a Derrick Henry. Like if they had a baby, that baby would be Braelon Allen. But he didn't quite build up on that previous year. This year wasn't. It was a little underwhelming. It wasn't bad. It was a little underwhelming considering, in my opinion. And when you turned on the tape, there were underwhelming moments. I was watching last night, for instance, the Washington State game with him, and it kept standing out to me that, again, another guy I'd like a few of these draft, but especially so with him, where it's if the blocking's not there, he's not getting anything done. He's got to be given the opportunity to get up to speed, to get in the open field, to make something happen. You can't argue with his production, especially as his age that you mentioned, 3,500 total yards over his career, 35 touchdowns. That's legitimate production for such a young guy. And he even added a little bit of pass catching this past year with 28 receptions. Another guy that does not do much in pass protection. He's somewhat willing. It's rough at every turn when you watch him do it. He can't stay in front of the guy. But I found myself going down from a guy of looking at him as this combination of a love child between those previous two guys I just mentioned, and more of now looking at him as kind of more of a LeGarrette Blount type of guy, in my opinion, as far as changing the kind of comp and the outlook of his forecast.
Yeah, so we're probably not going to get a 40 time, and I feel like the reason for that might be it would not be very good. But I still want to see if this is going to work out. I like his stiff arm. He's got a nice stiff arm that he can break out in the open field. I like his vision. You're right. He's not going to create stuff out of nothing, but I do think his vision for seeing where the play is going is good. He's also a fumbler. I think he had like 3 fumbles last year. Needs to take care of that. Very slow acceleration. We can tell that just by watching the tape.
Yeah.
Ability to improvise very limited, which we already kind of talked about a little bit. Unique talent, should be deadly in short yardage and power situations. I can't quite go top 100 as much as I do find myself intrigued by him. I think to be in that top area, you need to at least have potential to be like an every down back, and he just doesn't, because he's probably going to be a goal line back, a short yardage back, and I don't know if he'll be able to do the other stuff.
Agreed. My worry is that his power isn't going to show up at the line of scrimmage either. That he's a power guy that shows up when he's loose. You know, he's one of those guys that, okay, you get him a step or two past the line of scrimmage and he's up to full speed, and he becomes an absolute nightmare to tackle. But if you get him around the line of scrimmage or before he's up to full speed, it's, you know, taking candy from a baby kind of tackles that you get, where it's like, was there even a try there to get free of it? I feel like a guy like Zach Charbonnet, who's I think much lighter than this guy by probably 20 pounds, runs with much more ferocity in what he does. And that's where with me, I worry on this, Brendan, because he doesn't create enough on his own. So it's okay. I need you to lean back on being a power back. And this was a guy watching him last night that I found myself, as we were talking before we started the show today, just in prepping, that I found myself dipping down a little bit and maybe having him fall to more of a 4th round range without the testing numbers, because I have I think pretty strong concern at this point. Wisconsin tends to pour out pretty good linemen that'll block pretty well for you in the run game. That's been the history there. And though he is very young, is he a 4.7 guy that's 1.63 on a 10-yard split, 1.65 on a 10-yard split, where like my guys are going to have to block for 10 minutes before you're going to get through the hole? And if that's the case, then I got to dip him down a little bit. And I think I'm going to end up putting him more into like the 4th round range. I'll be at a high 4th round pick at that point, still 4th round, because he just doesn't have, I think, the prerequisite get up and go.
I have him in the 4th round as well. So
okay.
I think we got pretty good consensus there. The big board puts him in the mid to late 3rd. So who knows what it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly possible because he's unique back with his size. Not many are offering that in this draft, Brendan, but there is some holes in the game right now.
All right. Next up, we have our final guy who I suspect will be a top 100 first 2-day pick at running back. It's Marshawn Lloyd of USC. I feel like he's going to go in that range, but it's very, very close. Depends on the day you look at the database, honestly. They kind of go back and forth on him every day. USC, going to be 23. Tested fairly well overall. Nothing over the top great. He had good top speed and he had a good bench press. What do you think of Marshawn Lloyd at this point?
He's a tough running back with some nice shake in the open field. He got really kind of that the old traditional high knees kind of running style, which often helps you from those guys trying to swipe you from the back of your ankles when you're getting out there free. It helps you in being able to kind of prolong runs and just keep your feet at times through traffic. So I think he runs with a fair amount of power, 220 at 5'9". There's actually some legit there juice in that respect for some of the other guys we talked about that are, I think, missing that a little bit. We also have to, I think, address a little bit of the fact that I think Lincoln Riley fell in love with throwing the ball with Caleb Williams, and that there was not really ever a true commitment to trying to run the ball there with Lloyd. It was kind of like, I guess we got to run, you know, and of course, them being behind in so many games and having to always play from behind doesn't help matters in being able to try to stay consistent with your running game and with your giving your guy, you know, the feet. But I love his balance. I love how he keeps his feet off of contact. He's really good in that respect of things. My comp for him is a David Montgomery. So kind of a, you know, as I like to say, the meat and potatoes back doesn't maybe give you a lot of sizzle or a lot of like, ooh, wow factor, but just a tough runner who will find a place, I think, in this league. I don't see him as ever a starter in this league, but as a change of pace back who will find his way to getting his share of carries. Good enough to just basically average speed, average burst, basically, when you look at both of those two, but that's enough with his power. I think that'll be enough for him to, you know, find some touches somewhere, but never see him ascending to being the number one guy.
Yeah, I like his ability to lower his shoulder and hit with some nice impact. I like
Mm.
his cuts upfield when he sees the hole. He's also going to be a pretty good weapon in the passing game. Good patience. He's already been injured a pretty decent amount in his career, I believe. He's got a little bit of red in the ledger there. Not a secure ball carrier either. Another guy with fumble problems, man. It's a thing.
Mm.
And I think he'll be a fun big play threat in the NFL, but not an every down option. Change of pace back. I don't know. There's not a clean fit to me for his skill set, so I'm like fourth round or fifth round for him. I ended up not really being super into this one the more I went into it.
Yeah, I put a begrudging 3, but another guy that last night I was turning over in my head of dropping him to more of a fourth roundish range, which I think is where eventually for me he will fall to when it's all said and done.
Yeah. All
But
right.
then, like David Montgomery, if you go and look at him, like the combine numbers between these guys are almost identical, size almost identical, and Montgomery went in the darn second round.
Yeah, I just don't like how he's a good pass catcher, but he's not a good pass protector. That makes me wonder if he'll be able to do third down back stuff. Because that seems to be like the easy thing for these fringe running back prospects. If you can catch the ball and run routes and block, you can make it as a third down back.
Agreed. I don't. I
If
don't think I see him as a third down back kind of guy. Like that's not his
yeah.
skill set quite, and I don't. He caught the balls. He would do something with them when you threw it to him, but it wasn't like he was shining in that part of his game where it stood out.
Okay, so now we're kind of into the day 3 area of running backs, which might be more interesting to Seahawks fans because these are the guys we might actually, be looking at. I think it's more realistic we end up with one of these guys than a Trey Benson or a Jaylen Wright.
Agreed.
So let's start the conversation with Marquise Bucky Irving of the
Okay.
Oregon Ducks. A little bit undersized, a little bit on the smaller side as far as running backs go. Testing was kind of forgettable, not very explosive, not very athletic, but had some productive years at Oregon. Averaged over 6.5 yards a carry the last couple years. A lot of damage in the passing game as well. It's Oregon. They're going to be thrown to their backs.
Hmm.
So, how do you see Bucky Irving going in the NFL?
I do see as a base bottom line a third down only back as far as his upside goes. He change of direction is the name of the game with Bucky. He'll get the ball, and my initial comp for him was an Alvin Kamara type. He's much smaller than Kamara, not anywhere near as explosive as Alvin Kamara, but some of that same balance, and the balance comes from what they do as a running style. Kamara does this too, is where they get small like a batter going into the batter's box who shrinks up his batting stance to shrink the strike zone. And it's the same way with them as running backs where they get low in that forward lean and they make themselves even smaller. And he's already 5'9", so he makes himself even really smaller, but then still an ability to change direction from that place where a lot of running backs would only be able to kind of go forward. And so it shows off a little bit of their dexterity to be able to keep their feet in that way and be able to have that kind of change of direction. But as you said, I was really disappointed by what I saw from the numbers at 4.55 at 192 pounds and only 5'9". Not explosive enough. He doesn't break any tackles. If you get your hands on him, you're basically taking him to the ground. If he's got some space to set you up with on a move, he can do that hip shake Kimura thing and shake you off of a tackle with his hips just by kind of that change of direction and being kind of explosive with it. But he's not going to break too many tackles. Overall power in his game is completely missing. You mentioned his ability to catch. That's what stands out to me. His quickness, and you can line him up against a linebacker, and it will be a mismatch at the next level. I think that's where he eventually slides into when it's all said and done.
Yeah, he's all right. He's, gonna be that third down back that you're talking about exactly. Low center of gravity, which is something that I'm finding matters a lot more the more I look at running backs. Like you have that low
Mm.
center of gravity, you're gonna be able to survive contact so much easier. I like his cuts and goes, his ball security is good. Despite the passing game production, I feel like he does have some drops. I think he had a couple drops against Washington, so it's a volume thing, right? You get targeted a lot, you're going to drop some passes, but I think his hands could stand to be a little bit better. Gets a little out of control sometimes when he's making his cuts. I've noticed sometimes he just kind of trips over his own feet because he just goes a little too nuts out there. Um, so I'd say fourth or fifth rounder, somewhere around there for me. I don't think there's anything that stands out here in terms of talent because he's not explosive at all, really, to me.
He's not, and he's not got enough size to be that lack of explosive. You this size, you got to be a sub 1.5 guy. You got to be, to me, more of the 4.37 ish guy at on the 40-yard dash, or at least give me the broad jumper vert that show me that you've got that short explosiveness, short area, true explosiveness. I think part of the reason that you saw the stumbling is that it's hard to that forward gait and that lean forward and to run that style. As you said at the top, it does help with the contact balance. It helps you keep your feet to certain degrees. But when you start trying to do what he tries to do, is just those sharp cuts with that forward lean, it's going to send you off balance from time to time, even without a guy really trying to get you tackled, just because it's hard to pull. Not a lot of backs can pull that off. They don't have that ability to do that, but I agree with you. I don't see a lot of special points with this, and a guy that definitely has dipped into kind of low 4th round range for me at this point.
Okay, so that is Bucky Irving. Now we've got another guy who's roughly estimated to go somewhere in the 4th round here. Audric Estime of Notre Dame. Another Notre Dame running back who runs like a 4.7 40. I think Kyron Williams was like that, if I recall correctly. He was a Notre Dame guy.
Mm-hmm.
They send these guys every couple years, I guess. Only 20, though. Very young. Very young. I don't think you can be younger. I don't think it's possible to be an NFLer at 19 anymore because of the way it works. So I think this is as young as you can be as a prospect in the NFL. 5'11", 221 pounds. Pretty good size, actually. So he's slow. Acceleration's okay, but he's very explosive. 38-inch vert, 10-foot 5-inch broad. So he's got some explosion, got some strength. Had a nice 2023 as well, improved drastically over his 2022. How do you feel about Audric Estime?
I think his play speed is faster than the 4.7 and the 1.58. I don't think he's low 1.5s, but more 1.55-ish, more 4.6. He's not that slow. If you're looking for, he's a creative bull to me as far as kind of how he runs with the ball. And it stands out that if you're looking for me to the running back in this draft, that's maybe the most reminiscent of a Marshawn. I think there's 2 of them in this draft that have certain components of it. He's got kind of that body style and that sideways moving kind of crab-like movement ability, where they'll get lateral just to get clear of the tackler, and they're not really bouncing with it as far as it being like explosive, but they just get clear at all times. He was the 2nd highest graded running back by PFF last year, so they thought the work he did was really well, was on point as far as his choices of hole and vision. I think that matches up to what I see, where he makes the right choice. If the hole's there, he hits it and gets downhill, doesn't mess about. If the hole's not there, he will bounce, and if he's not bouncing to find the big play, he'll bounce to find the 3 or 4 yards where the hole had been completely closed and there was nothing there to be gained. 30 total touchdowns over the past 2 years, 2,000 yards. That's great production, again, for the age that you mentioned. I think he's got great leg drive. Of all the guys we talked about so far that could be kind of power backs, I think I've got a lot more trust that Audric is going to be able to be a power back and serve that role than I do with a Braelon Allen. I know that that's what this guy at least brings into the door bottom line as a short yardage back. I like his game quite a bit. I love the physicality he runs with, which I think is unique in this draft class, Brendan.
Yeah, I agree with all that. He's got an assortment of talents that I find pretty appealing here. I like his vision. I like his hands. I like his power. I think he's actually a little elusive in the open field. And he's got a nose for the end zone. It's a Sean Alexander thing. He gets close to the end zone, he wants in.
Yeah, exactly.
He is obviously slow, needs to work on his blitz pickup abilities. Everything just happens a little bit slowly with him, but it happens. So I'd say 4th rounder. I think there's some all-around ability here that I like. So I'm going to say 4th rounder.
I see it the same way. I've got him in the 4th round. I think even though he's got a little bit of the slow, I think the play speed's a little faster. And the one thing that stands out is he's always moving his feet, which is a big thing for running backs that they say, right? You get contact, keep your feet moving, keep your feet moving. His feet are always moving. He never gets them to a point where you feel like he's becoming, where he gets kind of stuck in mud or anything. It's always kind of looking to move, which helps him just to kind of change direction, change pace, even when it goes to come against some of his natural build and size.
Okay, so next up we have, this one's a fun one too, I think. I like this guy. We've talked about him a little bit before. It's Will Shipley. Will Shipley of Clemson. 22, 5'11", 206 pounds, average size. Mostly a 4th-round pick. Some big boards have him in the 5th. 2 fairly productive years, although it's worth noting he was more productive in 2022 than 2023 by a pretty wide margin. What do you think about Will Shipley at this point?
Yeah, he was fighting through some injuries this past year, so not able to match. He still matched the 1,000-yard campaign that he had in 2022, but it definitely dinged a little bit of his productivity fighting through some of those injuries. He's 5'11", 210, so a little bit slight at the position. I think he does run harder and bigger than a somewhat smaller frame. That stood out to me a little bit. His kind of patented thing to me is kind of a shoulder shake that he tries to do in the open field. A lot of running backs try to use their lower half with juke moves to kind of set up the broken tackle. With him, it's this. With him, it's just he's going to come in with the shoulder shake to do it, and it works. He's able to get clear a lot of times and free in the open field, breaking tackles that way. So just kind of an interesting little part of what he brings from that point. Solid vision, decisive when he needs to be. I think that he's probably more of a 3rd down back guy when it's all said and done. 85 catches through 3 college seasons, a mismatch in space. I think that is his upside. That's his future. I don't see him as a 1 or a 2, but as a guy that, even if you're talking about the Seahawks looking to target this kind of guy, to me, a 5th round guy at this point is where I've got him at. I think that this is a guy you could completely understand that selection, because here's a guy that you may have that could become that punt returner, kick returner, who could become the 3rd down back that now kind of leaves with DJ Dallas. Because I don't know necessarily that it's for sure that Charbonnet and Walker ascend into that play. They'll get snaps in 3rd down roles, but having a guy that's kind of a specialist into that spot like this guy could be very, very interesting. But he's elusive as hell. One of the more elusive backs we've got probably in this draft overall. Just hard to get your hands on in the open field, but a little slight, and another guy missing certainly any kind of power to speak of in his game.
Yeah, so acceleration's on point. He runs receiver routes. He doesn't just run check down and safety valve routes. He runs like Texas routes. He can run wheel routes. He's going to do that stuff. Elusive and shifty once in the open field. And I like the kick returning angle too. I think he'll be able to return kicks at the NFL level. Does drop a couple of passes here and there. I think his hands could get a little bit better. The 2023 production is a little alarming. He didn't produce as much as he did the previous year. But I put this guy up a little bit higher because I do think his talents will fit well as a kick returner with the new rules. Because the new rules are probably going to favor those guys who can make one cut and go. So you want a running back like guy, the back there. So I'd say 4th rounder. I think he's going to be a lot of fun.
Nice. Oh, there's a lot of people I know very high on him. I just think with this slide thing, it'll hold him back as a runner and put him to more of a limited capacity. He'll be good in that capacity, but I think it limits him in the capacity he can play at that point.
Okay, so next up, we are moving on down to Ray Davis of Kentucky. 24. A little bit on the smaller side, 5'8", 211 pounds. Testing was kind of mediocre across the board, except his miserable 20-yard shuttle indicates poor change of direction skills. Big boards mostly have him in the 4th, a little bit in the 5th. 2 productive years for Kentucky, though, so he's put up the numbers, but will those numbers translate to the NFL?
A guy that the Seahawks did meet with too, which I don't make too much of the meeting with team, but when they've met with guys in the past, that has included some kind of interest there with it. He's a slide and glide kind of back to me, where it's he's going to look for that little opening to come, wait out, hit it, get upfield and go. Very shifty in the open field. Able to really prolong runs by getting lateral in the open field and doing it on the back of, I think, really hardy vision when he gets those spots. It's like when you're running in Madden and you just know you have those perfect moments where you just go sideways with it, then you're back up the field and you've found a clearing by doing that where it looks like you're going to be about to be tackled, right? Like there's an envoy of guys, tacklers coming, and you just sort of cut back this way. And he had a lot of those runs that he was able to elongate off the back of that. I think he is very creative. He brings an assortment of moves that he knows to bring in at the right time. So, he can juke you, spin, stiff arm. He's got a kind of a complement of variety of things that he can kind of bring. And I just did like the vision overall for when he knows how to go find the hole. He knows the right space to go with at it. 33 catches out of the backfield shows he's also got an ability to catch this past year. I thought that showed up on tape with him as well. Pass pro is a negative. I think there's a little Travis Etienne to his game, but I think the more on the button player comp would be probably a former Seattle Seahawk. I go to these a lot, but like a Mike Davis kind of guy to me is to get to kind of a realistic outlook on him.
Maybe they're related.
maybe so.
Yeah. I like how he puts his shoulder down at the end of the run to squeeze out some extra yards, soft hands, generally a good receiver, knows how to set up his blockers, knows how to be patient and wait for blocks to develop. Just not great in short yardage, mediocre overall athlete, dances a little too much. So he's okay. I think his receiving ability stand out. If he can improve his ability to pick up blitzes, then he'll be a really good third down back. But there are third down backs everywhere. That's one thing I've learned going through this draft. Like, you throw a rock out the window, it's going to bounce off 50 third down backs before it hits the ground. So I would say 5th round. I don't feel the need to spend a higher pick on that than that on him.
I go 4th round because I do see him as more of than the third down back type to me. I don't think you see him as a starting back in this league, that's for sure. But as a guy that could be a complimentary number 2, yes, I do think that he could be that kind of back in there. Would I see him as an upgrade over, for instance, Kenny McIntosh? I would. So I do put him up in more of a 4th round range because of that. And I think it's a complete skill set, but I think your criticisms are all fair.
Moving right along here, we've got a little bit of a combine warrior with Tyrone Tracy Jr. So this guy made some waves at the combine from Purdue. Average size, approximately 209 pounds, 5'11", ran a nice 40, good 10-yard split, jumped over a building, 40-inch vert, 10-foot 4-inch broad, 6.813 cone, brilliant testing numbers. So he's got speed, acceleration, explosiveness. He's got change of direction. He's got a lot, but the big boards haven't come all the way around on it. They still view him as like a 5th round, 6th round, 7th round guy mostly. Why do you think that might be?
Well, first off, just one real year of production there, I think, out the gate. So 1 year starter. He was a wide receiver before, so he's still new to the position. He's still learning the position. So there's some moments that you've got some rough reads on tape. The times where it's not looks good, it looks kind of bad. A lot of that comes from, I think, the inexperience. It takes a while to kind of get a feel for how to operate in that position when you're changing from one to the other. He's got long legs. He's a kind of a pace back, just where he's almost going to come at times, it seems like, on pitch plays and stretch plays to the outside. It's just about like he's willing to almost come to a complete standstill before he wants to pick where his hole goes through. So just tremendous amount of patience. He doesn't take a lot of TFLs by leaning on patience too much. And it's not really he's trying to dance. He's looking for the hole, and he'll wait that hole out and trust his blocks and stay with them, set his blocks up with his, where he positions his body behind him in a kind of real subtle way. You mentioned his change of direction is razor sharp. He's got the good explosiveness. He's also an older prospect on top of being new to the position, Brendan, which is, I think, a little bit of the death knell there as far as why he's not being looked at better. But I do think that this is a guy that fits into that. We've talked about this, the Devin A. Chain or the Isaac Guerrero that we'll be talking about in this draft, that have that legitimate, kind of speed and explosiveness to him, where maybe this isn't a guy that you're going to be looking at as a number 1 back, but as a guy that you get him the 5 to 8 touches a game, you turn him into that kick returner. I do believe he does kick return stuff too. So I think he was actually a pretty good kick returner. That they can be productive in those limited touches. And I think the game's going here more to this way, Brendan, in the backfields. We've already long gone past the bell cow days where it's gone to now the 2 backs. I think we're now growing to a place of it being more about 3 and 4 backs under roster, because injuries are much higher with the 17-game season, the 2 Thursday night games. There's more of a need to really, I think, extend those touches all the way down through the running back room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree. That's why we talk about this stuff, right? Like, there are going to be people out there who say we don't need a running back. No, we need a running back. In fact, I would be very surprised if our 4th running back didn't end up mattering at some point this season. Like, DJ
Agreed.
Dallas mattered at some points last season. Not hugely, but Walker missed time. Charbonnet missed a game or 2, I think.
He did.
And McIntosh never got on the field. So DJ Dallas mattered. No
Well,
reason why the 4th running back won't matter this year.
We got the beast mode curse is still active, man. Ever since beast mode's retired, every single year our running back room gets to some degree or another not decimated, but beat at the very least beaten to hell. So to your point, yes, you need the fourth one on the roster.
But yeah, I like Tracy a good amount. Receiver background, was playing receiver at Purdue for a while, which gives him real flexibility. Going to be a good special teamer as well, I think. Maybe even punt returns, maybe. But definitely kick returns. Good vision, very elusive, plays through contact. It's just a lack of experience, I think. He doesn't know how to pass protect, dances in the backfield too much. You're going to have to work on him a little bit. You're going to have to definitely coach him up, but there is a real pot of gold at the end of the rainbow here. I think the reward could be a really special back. I would be okay taking him in the fourth round, honestly. I'll take the gamble there. I know it's a gamble, but I'll do him in the fourth round.
I go fifth round with him just because it is one where I think there's some backs here more fourth roundish where I little more understanding of the production I'm getting from him just a bit there with him, and with his a little bit being an older prospect on top of that, I go, I don't know on that one. But look, the sharp cuts, he's got quick reactions in short spaces, Brendan, where he can make the right move and react to things happening out there in the open field. That stands out in this draft in a way that's unique from some of the other running backs. So there is a lot to like with him. Don't get me wrong on that. And the explosiveness is legit. But because he does fit into that, to me, like those other guys we might talk about here with these guys that are really fast and explosive and big plays waiting to happen, they just don't tend to get taken in the early day threes. They tend to be more mid day threes to late day three guys.
Yeah, that does make sense. So I don't know. I see some really intriguing potential there. So
Definitely.
I'll push him up in the fourth round, but I can understand that 1 year of production, that wasn't even that much. He didn't even have 1,000 yards from scrimmage. He had 850.
Yeah. It's hard to validate that on that. And I think they moved him out quite a bit on the field too. It wasn't like he was, they were fluctuating him out. So it's like, how many carries can he handle? Is he kind of receiver body? Is he? They go, yeah, I'm gonna have to limit the touches, and there's some upside. I mean, you're going to get something from this if you pick this guy, even if it's in the fourth round. You're getting some absolute touches and ways to find mismatches with him with his receiver background that you talked about.
All right, next up here, we've got another guy that I liked more than I thought I would. Dillon Laube, or Dillon Loeb, or Dillon Lobe. I don't know.
Laube.
New Hampshire. Not often you get to talk about a New Hampshire prospect.
No, not at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so average size, 5'10", 206, a little bit small maybe. Testing numbers, I mean, the acceleration's on point, 152. Good vert, good three cone, really good 20-yard shuttle. So change of direction. He's got strength, some explosiveness, acceleration. There's some stuff to like here. So what'd you take away from Dillon Laube?
It's kind of a Christian McCaffrey knockoff, would be my deal with it. Nowhere near, of course, talent. That's what we call it, knockoff. But a multifaceted back, decisive runner with nice vision and feet, on top of being as quick as he is, like you talked about, quick. He usually does keep it to a one-cut running style, so he gets downhill really fast. I like to presses the hole well. He is capable of still bouncing it outside, even though he does get downhill quick. Sometimes those downhill guys are just downhill or they run into the pile. He's a guy who can get downhill and then react down there as he gets close to the line of scrimmage to still kind of bounce it out late into the carry. He's got a wide outs hands with over 120 receptions over the past 2 years. So he's a threat out of the backfield, and in watching his tape, he can run legit routes as a wide receiver. I don't think he's smoking any corners, but safeties, linebackers, I think would have a lot of issues with him when running routes. A really solid contact balance as well. That's part of that McCaffrey stuff that you see where McCaffrey can take those hits, and he's not a bigger guy, but he can still take the hits, keep his feet, and still get going. And that's something that I think stood out to me with Dillon, that he still would keep his feet there on those a lot of those plays. So I like a lot of this guy. I don't see him as a one or a two, but I do see him as a third down back specialist type of guy who might get a couple more touches on top of that. But a guy that would fit into an NFL roster. He's going to make an NFL roster. Kick return guy potential there as well, maybe punt return guy too. So a lot that this guy kind of offers.
Yeah, I also think this is another guy who may end up being a returner in the NFL. I think that maybe he can do kick returns and punt returns. I think he did a little bit of that at New Hampshire. So I like that angle. I like all the receiving production he put up, he's got like 120 catches over the last 2 years. Like, how would you compare him to a guy like Max Borghi?
Oh, he's better than Max
Yeah,
Borghi.
he's
Much
like
better
rich
than
man.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
rich man, Max Borghi, but
he's
poor
a
man.
he's the multi-million-dollar version of Max Borghi. Is the way I would
Which
reference.
means that Max Borghi is the homeless man's version of Christian McCaffrey.
That's right.
That's how that works.
All right. And
Right.
he's been out for a while. He's been out of the home for a while. But this guy's going to be able to play. With Max, you went, well, I don't know if he's even going to hold on to an NFL roster. I have a very strong feeling that this guy will be at the very least a league average third down back for you. That's to me, at least his floor with something above that.
Yeah, he's going to be something in this league. Maybe he'll just be a really good return man with gadget play potential like Cordarrelle Patterson, but I think he'll probably be more than that, like Cordarrelle Patterson ended up being eventually. I don't know if he'll be that good, but I think he could do some of the same things, and I think he's going to be a good player. I'd take him in the 4th round, no problem. There's just so many branches that he has to fall through before he hits the ground of being like a non-impact football player. Like, he'll be return stuff, third down back stuff. The ability to just run the ball out of the backfield is good too. Somewhere, something was going to click. So, yeah, I would say 4th rounder for Dillon Laube.
I'm in the 5th round, but it's at the top of the 5th round for me.
Right. All right. So this next one broke my heart a little bit. I'm just going to be honest here. This one broke my heart a little bit. I've talked about him a lot this season. Frank Gore Jr. He's just a little small, isn't he? He's didn't inherit his dad's size quite, did he?
No, he's missing a couple inches and probably about 20 pounds from his dad.
He's got 8 1/4 inch hands. I think Kenny Pickett's got him beat. Not that it matters as much, but to give a frame of reference there, Kenny Pickett has this man beat. Yeah. Only did 1 combine event and it was bench press, and he did 12, which is like, he's got short arms. Why aren't you cranking out those BPs? You got the baby arms. You got to be able to crank them out.
Hey, do one drill, man. Give me a shuttle. Just give me at least a shuttle drill. Come on.
Big boards mostly put him in like the 7th round range now. A lot of production at Southern Miss the last 2 years, though. He's got like almost 3,000 yards from scrimmage. So, how you feeling about Frank Gore Jr.?
Definitely was hoping for more. At first, you see is a little bit of the Father's Gate running style wise, but I think he's more Le'Veon Bell like in the way he runs versus dad, that was decisive with a forward lean, just got downhill. So he's not also, as far as missing the size, he's also not his father in the running style in the way that he, where Marvin Harrison Jr. has a lot of elements in his game that are like his dad. I think with Frank, there's not a lot of elements out here that are like his dad. Back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, 50 catches out of the backfield. So he gives you good productivity coming out of college and ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. Very elusive in the open field, a little upright, so he can get caught and brought down. He's not as strong in driving the pile forward like his dad was a great finisher as a runner. So, if he got you 4 yards, he'll fall forward for an extra 2.5. This guy, bam, he's stuck, he's caught, he's done. I wasn't sure about his speed, Brendan, so I really wanted to see the 40 on this. This is one of those guys like Braelon Allen where I go, I want to see how fast you are, because you have a level of competition there that you're worried about with Southern Miss. They're not going up against the best of the best. So, okay, he's beating the accountants and the lawyers and doctors and stuff, but what are you going to do against true blue competition? So I'm still not sure about the legitimacy of his speed. That's the big worry that I have with him. I think he's got an okay burst, but I'm worried that he's got an average burst and slow speed. Maybe that's why he didn't test.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely into that late 5th, 6th, 7th roundish range with him at this point. Probably 6th, 7th round range at this point with him.
Yeah, I'm down to the 7th round with him too. I like his low center of gravity. I like his contact balance. I think he's got good vision. I think he's a good route runner, but he's got slow acceleration. He's not a very decisive runner at times. Doesn't pick up the blitz as well. Not breaking away from opposing defenses. He's going to have a lot of 12-yard runs where you look at it and you go, I think a better running back would have had like a 40-yard run,
Yeah, there's more meat on that bone.
Yeah. So I guess you could use him as an inside runner on like short yardage situations, maybe, even though he's undersized. But what's the point, right? You can find other guys who can do that. 7th round. Kind of broke my heart.
He's easily brought to the ground. Like if you try to use him on power runs, he's just going to get taken down really quickly. Any kind of penetration arm tackles can bring him to the ground. You know, it's tough. And that's where you're caught a little bit in between as a tweener, as a running back, where you're neither powerful, neither really fast. And so you're okay, well, where's your fit here at the pro level? He doesn't catch the ball great. He's been functional with it, but I don't just see him sliding into a third down back roll either. So I think he's gonna have a hard time fitting onto an NFL roster, especially if the speed is a little slower in that 4.7 range at his size.
All right. Next up, we have Cody Schrader of Missouri, and a Missouri Tiger. A little bit small, 202 pounds, short arms too, by the way. Short arms are not the biggest deal in the world for a running back, but they can affect things a little bit, like your ball security, I think.
28 inches is really tiny too. I think my hands are bigger than 28 inches.
Yeah, it's tough. Acceleration was okay, but otherwise didn't test all that well. Big boards have him in the 6th or 7th. The aggregate puts him in like the late 6th, early 7th. Monster year last year for the Tigers, though. He had like 1,800 yards, 6 yards a carry, 14 touchdowns. So I think this guy transferred from a small school in 20. I think this guy was a transfer from a small school. I can't remember which one it was. Let me look that up real quick. But what do you think of Cody Schrader as a player?
Definitely feels a little pint size on the field. I mean, you feel that size with him. He is decisive, smart with his cuts, strong burst. That 155 burst, I think, is even a little bit. He may be even quicker than on the field. But really timely cuts, good at juking guys. He's got some really nice feet that make it hard to get a kind of a lock on him as you're approaching him in the open field. Like you said, the 1,500 yards of production stands out, which is pretty. I mean, that's not just you're cracking over 1,000; you're getting well above it at that point. There's limitations though here. The size stuff stands out to me. His pass pro needs a lot of work, but then I wonder how much he's really going to be able to do in pass pro at 5'8". He came in and he got up to 215 pounds at the combine, Brendan, but I think he probably ate like 5 burgers before he got to the combine. He looks like he's about 200 pounds on the field on game day to me on the college football field. So I'm very, very worried that he just doesn't have enough size to him. He's too slight to where you're very exciting in college, but you get to that pro level and you can't have a finger knock you down, which you can't just hope to be elusive past everybody. You got to eventually have a little bit of power to your game that you can bring. And I think he's not going to be able to bring that. I could see him developing into a third down back, but then that's going to be on the basis of the back of whether or not he can get his pass pro up to snuff, which is not up to snuff right now. And again, I don't know if it will because he is just so small.
Yeah, he's got great vision. He understands how to set up a run. The monstrous performance in 2023 definitely stands out. Hard to bring down once he gets built up to full speed, but takes him a while to get up to full speed, I guess. Not super long, but a little bit long. But fun story. And by the way, I think the school that he played for was what was it called? Old Dominion or something like that. No, I'm sorry. It was Truman State University, the Truman Bulldogs, I think.
Truman Bulldogs.
So it was a very small school guy, and then he was kind of a big like underdog story because he transfers into a real school and starts putting up monster numbers.
Yeah.
So fun story, but not much of an athletic profile. I like the physicality that he plays with, but he is so small. That might just mean he has a really short career, That might just mean he's looking to hang it up in 3 years. So 6th round pick.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. I think there are certain guys with the right at that line where the physicality can work at the college level, but then just isn't going to work when you get down to the pro side of it, unfortunately. And I do see that with Cody, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right. Let's see here. Next up, we have Jase McClellan of Alabama, the Crimson Tide. They're not sending their best group to the draft this year, but they are sending some guys that are notable. And this one's interesting. Decent size for an NFL back. Didn't do much at the combine. Did 20 bench press reps, which is fine. Decent production for Alabama the last couple of years. Nothing over the top crazy. He's not exactly carrying the mantle of Derrick Henry and of Mark Ingram and Trent Richardson, but decent production. Big boards mostly have him going in the 6th or 7th. That seems like a reasonable expectation to me. So, what do you think of McClellan?
Another pace and space running back, get on the ball, give him an opportunity to try to use his patience and vision to find the hole. Seems to be a lot of what Alabama did with him for the most part. He does have a really nice natural feel for how to play the position, loose hips in his change of direction. Really great pad level with what he brings. Always seemingly balanced at all times. These running backs out of Alabama are always well schooled and coached up, coming out, whether they're dynamic talents or not. They tend to be very clean, fundamentally speaking. And I think that that's what you do get with Jase. He seems to have a good instinctual understanding of what he needs to call upon to break a particular tackle at times, which I think he's got some nice inventiveness to his running style. His pass blocking is a complete mixed bag to me. There's some good reps in there. There's some bad reps in there. It's all over the place. He at least shows you can do some of it, I guess. Okay burst, flat out. He's missing some long speed. There's no way around it. He also doesn't have much power to break any tackles or leg drive to finish runs. So, you're missing speed and you're missing power, but you've got just okay burst. What's your future at the NFL level? I think that's a 7th round pick. Not that you don't have some good things to lean on, but you have to have kind of those quintessential elements you bring to each position. Like quarterback's got to have some commensurate arm strength or mobility, right? You got to give me an either or on that. Same thing I think with a running back on that is like, you need to give me some of that power. You need to give me a little bit of that speed because he gets slow in the open field.
Yeah, I like his low center of gravity. He can absorb hits and keep going. Good contact balance. Good routes that he can run as a receiver. He can run like legitimate routes. Nice moves in the open field. I think that he can develop into being a really good 3rd down back because of his ability to pick up blitzes. But there's a little bit of backfield dancing, and there's not great speed, and he's not super elusive either. So he's kind of one of these guys who's okay at a bunch of stuff, but he's not really great at anything, I feel like. I don't know if there's anything I would point to and say that's what's going to get McClellan into the NFL.
Agreed. Yeah, I saw the same thing with the pass catching too. He was solid, but not 3rd down back. Yeah, it's good and functional.
So 6th round pick for me, something like that. Nothing too stand out.
I fell in the 7th with it. I just felt like he's just not going to have enough juice to make it happen there with him. So I just went, I just don't see it. You got to get him in space with Jase. He's a guy, get him in space. If he has great blocking, he can really, cut it up, but it's got to almost kind of be done perfect for him to make stuff happen. And that dipped him down for me.
All right. We're going to be pretty familiar with this guy because we watched him play a lot last year. We're going to know what's up with this next guy, I think. And a lot of people in the chat will probably know too. It's Dillon Johnson of the UW Huskies, the Pac-12 champions, participants in the national championship game. He kind of came out of nowhere because to start the year, he was not even the lead back. He wasn't even like he wasn't even really a part of the offense. And then he just grabbed a role and didn't let go and ended up being a very important part of that team. So nice 2023, 1,200 rushing yards, 200 receiving yards, 16 touchdowns. And then he gets to the combine and either he just can't move or he was still injured, one of the two, because he had a terrible combine. And now people aren't really sure what to make of him. So where do you stand on Dillon Johnson?
Well, I do think that he had that injury really late in the season. So having a little bit of extra time it was going to take for him to get right half these guys are training for the combine, much less rehabbing injuries. They're like training in the drills to get them right and better. He's a very he's a very physical runner, decisive runner, north and south. He's not getting east and west. He's going to get downhill on you and get downhill really quick. Average burst, not really much top end speed to speak of if we're talking about at the NFL level. But he runs physically and he'll break through arm tackles like nobody's business. You better wrap up if you're going to bring this guy to the ground. I would even say he's a violent runner at times. Very strong in finishing his runs, lowered pads, leg drive, always falling forward. He's got all of that. Now, as you said, a little bit of middling production leading up to last year where he had a little bit more of the breakout. And you wonder if in some of that breakout, he was able to benefit from the fact that so many of the other guys on that Washington offense were getting so much attention that perhaps that was allowing him to get a little bit extra done. Doesn't really have any moves. There's no jukes. There's no shakes. There's no spins. He'll give you some sharp cuts and some good change of direction. But he just doesn't have any real way to break many tackles outside of just being strong and trying to fight through the tackles. I think he would be a good short yardage back in the NFL just to find that role, a small crack of a hole. He'll ram his way through it, and he's not shy about doing that. I do just think that he's missing elite traits as far as to be a 1 or a 2 running back. And I don't think he's quite good enough as a pass catcher to purely be fitting into a third down returner role either. I think he's a little faster than the 4.68 he timed in and 1.62. He's obviously better than that, Brendan. You know that too, but I don't think he's he's not, 4.44, it's still going to be okay. 4.68. It's more like 4.57, right? Or 4.58,
It's not going to be good. It's not going to be anything special. So, yeah, this one's kind of tough here. I mean, he runs with power, runs with toughness, good in short yardage, good vision, good decision making. And I don't know how much of it works at the NFL level. Like, he's not a very good athlete. He doesn't have explosive agility, not going to make people miss. Not really a good pass protector either. Not really that good as a blitz handler. And I don't know. After that combine performance, I'm kind of scratching my head. I don't know anymore. I want a power back. I do want a power back here because I don't think Charbonnet is a true power back. I think he's more of a third down back because he's such a good pass catcher and blocker. I think that should be more how we look at Charbonnet than just focusing on his power. So I'm looking at a guy like Dillon Johnson and I'm like, yeah, but is there any reason to even spend a pick on it? Is this just going to be a UDFA guy because he's not an athlete? I don't know. So I definitely docked him significantly after that combine down to like late day 3 UDFA type territory.
I think he's probably UDFA at this point. He needed the testing scores to elevate him into a draftable state and just didn't have that. And it's not his fault. Got injured late, but unfortunately he'll dip out of there.
Yeah, I think that's likely the case. Let's see here. Next up we have Louisville, Jahwar Jordan, 25, one of the older rookies. One of the that's about as old as you can get unless you're going to BYU or something.
You're gonna have to take this one. I don't have nothing on Jahwar.
Okay, so he's smaller guy, 5'9", 193, ran an average 40, ran a pretty good 10-yard split. Big boards, mostly seen him around the 6th or the 7th. Been pretty productive for Louisville the last couple years. Had a real nice year in 2023. He kind of plays with this ferocious and aggressive nature that mitigates his small size. He busts a lot of big plays as a pass catcher out of the backfield. He's like one of those threats to take a swing pass and house it. Really good cut and go. Really good at just planting his foot and going. A lot of moves in the open field, and I think he'll be good on kick returns, which we care about that more than usual.
Mm-hmm.
He's still small. He's not really got good top speed. You're going to chase him down a lot. Doesn't have wiggle around the line of scrimmage before he builds up speed. It's one of those things where once he builds up his speed, he's tough to deal with, but he doesn't have the ability to like deal with immediate penetration. Everything just feels like it happens a little slowly with him. So I'll say 6th round feels appropriate. Nothing too stand out here. I like the tenacity that he plays with, though. I do think there's something to be said for that.
Nice. Yeah, he was splitting the duties there with Isaac Guerrero last year.
We will get to, believe me. That one's more interesting than this one.
Yeah.
Okay. First, though, before we get there, we're going to go with another jackrabbit. A lot of jackrabbits in the draft this year. South Dakota State, Isaiah Davis. So we know the Jackrabbits are sending a couple of offensive linemen to the draft this year. So it makes sense they would also be sending a running back, and that running back is Isaiah Davis. 6 feet flat, 218 pounds. Combine performance was pretty much average, and the big boards put him in like the 6th round. So did you have anything on Isaiah Davis?
I really didn't like his tape very much, to be honest with you. This will be one running backs on some of these where I think this will be just kind of my evaluation where there's not much to speak of with it. He has nearly 3,000 yards over the past 2 years. I think some of it's benefiting from that blocking up front. As much as anything, he's to me a late round running back to I think he's probably more likely a UDFA really with his speed deficiencies. He's got some nice jump cuts and ability to bounce it outside. I just see very limited upside. Just wasn't a lot there to me that got me excited. I just kind of came away very quickly on my notes after looking at him going, I I don't see already in a draft with some guys got some issues. I see just too many little things there that just he's a little labored in getting to his top speed. I think he did the 4.57, 1.58 testing numbers, but he's not that on the football field. To me, he was more of a 4.7 guy in the field. He was more of a 1.63 kind of 10-yard split guy. I just think he's going to be too slow to make it happen at the next level.
Yeah, so what did I have here for Isaiah Davis? Runs with a decent amount of power. I think he'll be a decent third down back at the NFL level. Understands how to set up his blockers, understands how to set up a run, but he dances too much, doesn't have great hands, not decisive, not limited speed. He's not going to be able to run to the outside and get the edge. So I'd go like 5th round or 6th round on him. I like him a little bit more than you do because I think he'll be a pretty good power back. I like the power that he runs with, but that's about all I see with him.
Yeah, I just do. And going through one of his games, just a couple of his games, I just went. There's some guys that you'll watch that you go, okay, and I see it enough. I'm done on that. And he just struck me as one of those kind of guys.
I mean, that happens a lot with these running backs down here because there were so many day 3 guys that I had to look at, and it all blends together.
They do. And you're looking for something that's a separating factor if you're going to me, launch him up. Because if we're talking about putting him into fourth or 5th round range at that point, it's versus doing that versus alignment versus maybe a better, a good cornerback of really good quality. You're not just looking to pick that guy at that point. You're really going to be looking to pass other guys, I think, that are, much more, better in their potential and what you're getting in those rounds versus what guys like this kind of give you in that area.
Okay, so next up, we're going to go with a 1-2 punch from Georgia. We're going to talk about a couple of Georgia Bulldog backs. They had 2 of them that are going to the draft this year. First guy is Daijun Edwards. Familiar with Daijun at all?
Yeah, tough inside runner who can keep his feet through a slim hole. Bodies on the ground, glancing arm tackles reaching for him. He can find a way to keep his feet, get through the hole. He's got a little single lateral hop step thing that he does to lose defenders, which is pretty effective. He's not terribly athletic, but it works. He doesn't waste any time, wastes no motion, just gets downhill and gets after it. He runs really well behind his pads, finishes his runs and falls forward. He's just a kind of back that coaches just tell him, just get down, get it done, fight like hell. There's nothing really artistic about what he does. He's not going to make you miss in a phone booth. But if he's got a defender closing in him on a few steps, on collision, he's falling forward. And sometimes you can even kind of break past that tackle and get you a couple extra yards beyond that. He just doesn't have any moves. And I think that the power sometimes comes and goes with him a little bit, where it's not always consistent run in, run out. There are times that he's just brought down, I think, really, really quickly. I do think he's a solid pass catcher out of the backfield. Not extraordinary, but just fine. And he's actually solid as a pass protector. I think he's actually a pretty decent pass protector in this class versus other guys. I still see him as kind of a fringe NFL back. Maybe he can kind of find a home as a third down kind of back specialist, but it's a 7th round back for me at that.
Yeah, I have 7th round for him as well. I like his power between the tackles. I like his pass protection, decent receiver, little bit of elusiveness, but he's not going to stack up a lot of missed tackles. Not a great athlete, didn't do anything at the combine, even though he was there. And sometimes he dances a little bit. So forgettable, jack of all trades, master of none, 7th rounder or UDFA, take your pick for me.
Forgettable is a good way. You see his tape and you go, there's nothing bad here. Like he doesn't have some horrible one thing that stands out with him that you're like, oh, that nails it off the board for me. But it's kind of underwhelming tape overall where there's nothing also from a skill set that stands out.
Right. The other Georgia running back, I think there's a little more to sink your teeth into, Kendall Milton. Kendall Milton of Georgia, much bigger, 225. So he's one of the bigger backs in this class. He's slow, but he's got real quick acceleration. He's got good explosiveness. Big boards mostly pick him in the 6th or 7th round. The aggregate actually has him going undrafted. But how do you see Kendall Milton in the NFL playing?
He's fun because he gives you that 151 burst with the 225 on a 6'1.5" frame. So you have the size with the legit burst that is so very hard to find. I don't think we could find somebody in this draft with the same kind of size, weight to burst dimensions to him. The first thing you have to start out with Kendall is the injury situation. It's not as much as that it's been major injury after major injury, but he's just constantly dinged up there at Georgia and having a hard time staying on the field. And when I watched his tape, I don't know if you felt the same way, but he's got the leg brace on his leg, and it feels like he's dragging the leg with him. So when he gets to just go forward in the straight line, everything's good. You feel that burst. You see the accelerations there. It looks good. He's got kind of it's like a skier, his running motion, it's like he's almost skiing a little bit. And it looks nice on that. When he's got to start to get lateral and bounce to the outside, you feel him pulling that leg along. It reminds me of Kurt Warner back in the day at times post the ACL injury that he had back in the Kingdom when he came back, where you just knew the thing wasn't at 100%. And so I do worry about that with Kendall. But he runs with a fair amount of power for his size. You do feel a little bit of that bigger frame. And when he does get up to speed, he's hard to bring down. There's not a lot of extra moves, but then that's where I wonder with him, where there's maybe some upside there where like, well, once he gets to 100%, he can actually reuse his leg again. Does he maybe kind of start to turn it back around? So there's some hidden upside here with him, I would say, to your point. And I think that's legitimately there. I don't know if I'd want to risk a pick on it. I'd love to get that as a UDFA kind of swing. But he's an interesting cat, especially if the health will improve. And if I am right, that it's like if you interviewed him, if you're Seattle and you're like, hey, how was that leg last year? And he's like, man, I was dragging this knee this way and that knee that way. And then I had my foot with it.
Yeah. I found Kendall Milton to be really intriguing. He doesn't have the speed, the elusiveness, not going to be good on third down because he can't really catch, not a receiver threat, not a blocker, but the guy can power through contact. The guy stays upright. The guy survives contact constantly. His instincts following his blocks are good. And, they never worked him too hard in Georgia. He was never a guy who got the ball 8 billion times. He was a guy who got the ball a normal number of times a game. So I like Kendall Milton a lot, actually.
Oh, you could be in a steal here. You can get this guy in the 7th round by finding yourself with a steal if that health rounds out. And no doubt about it, because he's got a legit skill set. It's just about, to me, where is that health? I want to see those medicals, man. Give me the doctors in the room.
Yeah, if he's healthy, I'm putting a 5th round value on him, and I'd love to get him in the 7th. But again, we just don't know. Unfortunately, we just don't know yet.
It's true. It's very true.
Okay, now we're going to talk about maybe the biggest star of the combine at the position. Another Louisville back. You mentioned him earlier. And this guy needs introduction because there's something special here potentially. Isaac Guerendo, Louisville, 24 years old, 221 pounds, and yet he flies. 4.33 40. 41.5-inch vert, 10-foot-9-inch broad. Some of the best jumps we've ever seen by a running back at the combine. Good 3-cone, really good 20-yard shuttle. Couple of the big boards have caught on, man. The PFF puts him in the 4th round. So they're starting to come around. ESPN in the 5th. The aggregate puts him in the 5th. What do you think about Guerendo?
Yeah, I think just the recent history of, and I was trying to think about it because I know the Ravens drafted a guy too that was like this, like the A-Chain guy. They also have one of their kind of guys that's like that. I think the recent success with those guys in those limited roles will help to buoy up Isaac in the upcoming draft. I have him in the 4th round kind of for that reason, in that these guys that have come through the draft recently with this kind of background tend to have this happen. And I think NFL teams just will move with that stuff with time. I don't know if he's quite as fast as the 4.33, 155. I know he was universally great across the board on the testing numbers to make you think, well, the explosiveness is there. I think it's a little bit of a titch slower on the football field. Not that he's slow on the football field, but it is a bit titched slower down on that. As a running back too, this is a guy to me that you're going to have to get the hole opened, or he's going to hit the hole. And if it's not opened up, or he's not going to get anything done for you. He's got limited vision, limited creativity, no real open field moves. The first guy that's going to try to tackle him in space and get their hands on him is going to take him down to the ground. But if you can get him an opening with that speed, you're talking about a home run hitter that you could be, that like that Devin A-Chain guy that I talk about. It's like, look at his stats last year. Look at the yard per carry average on that guy. And what you're seeing is it's not going to be a high volume guy, but will be a guy that if you fit him into that role for those special amount of touches, he might be really good. These guys have been doing really well in this league because for a defense, you're not used to it. You're dealing with a running back that's, let's say, an Audric Audric Estime, 4'6", 4'7" guy, 4'5" guy, maybe even on the fast side. And so as a defense play after play, you're kind of getting used to that flow, right? The bell cow back's out there, the Najee Harris type is out there, and you're kind of dun, 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 dun. Now you bring that fast guy in there as the counterpunch, and the defenses are still in that same flow state that they've been in. Like, it's kind of like a rhythm, right? Where it's like, hike, okay, I've got 2 steps to get to this spot. Suddenly now you have a back on the field that's getting to yay spot much quicker than that other back was, and you're not prepared, and he's already passed you and by you. And that's where that counterpunch of this kind of back versus your kind of normal bell cow guy can be really, really useful. So I do have him in that at the start of day 3 in the 4th round because of that. I don't like the fact that there is some stuff he's missing at an elemental level that I would like to have on my running backs. He did as well have a little bit of a rich injury history here, Brendan. Hamstring injuries in 2018, 19, and 2020. You know how it is with those twitched up, real, sinewy kind of guys. And he also
that means 3 clean years though, right? Because if it was 2020, then 1, 2, and 3 were clean, right?
Liz Frank ended his season in 21.
Okay. You're right.
So that may be where the thing that he deserves to go for, but maybe there'll be teams that do ding him down on the medicals and worry about that. But he is a fun weapon in this draft, Brendan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I liked him a lot too. I like his catch radius as well. He's somebody who can go down and dig out tough catches. He's a pretty good blitz handler, I think. Pushes through tacklers with power, good decision making in 2023. So 4th round, I agree with you. Actually, I actually have him in the 4th round as well.
Yeah,
just too much talent to pass up.
It is. The upside there's too tantalizing.
All right, so next guy is a guy that you mentioned right before we started the stream, actually, as kind of a late attention getter, and he had his pro day like 2 days ago, and he got attention. He got some big time attention with this pro day. This guy absolutely crushed it. I'm talking about Blake Watson of Memphis. 24 years old. All of these measurements are from his pro day, so take them as seriously as you feel like they need to be taken. Don't get it twisted. I'm not suggesting that it was a scientific measurement, but 4.39 40, 41.5-inch vert, 11-foot 3-inch broad. Those jumps would be some of the best jumps in NFL history by a running back. That 40 time is 93rd percentile. This guy is a freak. And I'm sure the numbers are fudged by a little bit, but they're not fudged by that much. It's not like he jumped 32 inches and they just said he jumped 42. Maybe he jumped like 41 and they gave him the half. Maybe he jumped 40 and a half, I'm not suggesting that they completely misrepresented what he is. So really productive across the last 2 years for the Memphis, what are they? The Memphis Tigers, Memphis. I'm not sure.
I think it's Tigers.
Yeah. Still projected to go undrafted on every big board that he's on, but that may not last after what happened a couple days ago. So how do you feel about Blake Watson?
I instantly fell in love with Blake Watson. Watching his tape. I call him the Marshall Faulk of Memphis. Nearly 3 straight years of 1,000 yards, 27 total touchdowns. He capped it off this last year by averaging 9.1 yards per carry. It's pretty good. He's also every single year on top of the 1,100 yards. He added 500 yards receiving this last year. And if you look at him on a yearly basis, he's taken his catches from 10 to 37 to 53 this past year. So you see improvement from this player as well. I call him the Marshall Faulk of Memphis because he has that Marshall Faulk jump cut that he can call upon at any point in time to get free. And it's deadly and it's hard to deal with and you never see it coming. He's got a great understanding of how to run the rock and when to be all gas, no brakes, when he needs to take a little bit of time, when he needs to bounce it outside. He doesn't, turn down holes to bounce out plays. He makes the right decision seemingly kind of every time. No wasted motion, very sharp cuts. It seems to extend every single run. He's going to get you extra yards on it. He's very sturdy on contact, always balanced. Delivers some plus leg drive, I think, even for his size at 5'9", 195. Some of that might not translate as much, but he fights hard on every run, never dies easy. There's so much that I liked about his game. I think he has plus vision for the position. I think he works very quickly to diagnose where he needs to go and what he needs to do. And I didn't see a lot of holes in his game, quite frankly, in watching him play. Maybe you can knock into the pass protection stuff, maybe a little bit. But for what this guy's done, albeit I know it's out in Memphis, and with those testing numbers, he's vaulting up my boards here and may even end up into the late third roundish range when it's all said and done to me, as far as my outlook on him. This is a kid with legit production and legit tape.
Yeah, late third round. I can't quite get up that high, but this guy, he gets your attention, man. His lateral agility is off the charts. He's got good instincts with the football, sifts through traffic on his runs really well. He's really good at kind of navigating through the thicket. Waits for blockers to set up before he goes. He is smaller. He is definitely smaller, but when you test that well, it's a little bit more okay that you're smaller. Runs upright, so he does crumple a little bit when he gets hit. He doesn't have the low center of gravity you would prefer for a 5'9" guy. I'm kind of coming around on the idea of him in the fourth round. I can't quite do third round yet. I'm not there yet, but I might get there. I mean, that pro day gets your attention in a very stark way. Like, that is insane explosiveness.
I think the broad are legit. It's part of that jump cut that he does, that Falk jump cut, where it's not just simply the guy is able to just jump running full speed. It's that he's jumping and he's clearing 2 to 3 yards this way around a defender that's trying to pursue at this angle. And it breaks tackles over and over and over again on the tape. And I think it will translate at the pro level because he's just going to be so hard to corral with that ability to kind of always jump past you. And I think it will translate. I think the size stuff is valid. I do. And I was late on this guy, Brendan, but when I turned on the tape, I just kept watching game after game going, what am I missing here with this guy? I just see a skill set that's very multiple and varied, and he can do a lot of different things really well, and just understands how to run the ball, evidenced by that 3 straight 1,000-yard years, and every year getting better. I mean, it just, to me, kept just kind of trending everywhere across the board, is just liked him more and more and more as it went along.
Upo, thank you for the $10 super chat. This running back class is awful. This is the Kenny Pickett QB class of running backs. Every year there's always one position group. Go Hawks. Yeah, but it's kind of awful in the right ways for the Seahawks, right? Because they need a running back, I feel like, unless they feel like Shenault can do it. But they don't need a elite running back. They just need a kind of intriguing sleeper guy.
One trick pony. You can get by with the one trick pony as the fourth. You know, he only does this. Well, but as long as he does that, we'll be fine with that. But I agree, Upo. This is one of the weaker positions of the class, and maybe one of the weakest we've seen in recent years of the class. That's most definitely. There may be a legit chance we don't see a running back taken in the first 2 rounds. The only way it'll happen is by the supply and demand side of it, being that there's teams that are just at that point kind of desperate for the back, so they're willing to jump it to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years ago we had Breece Hall and K9. Those were the best backs, but at least they went in like the early second. Both of them did.
And they've far better projected out than I think these 2 guys did.
Yeah, Najee Harris was a first-round pick. ETN, first-round pick. I'm going back through recent draft classes. 2020 had Jonathan Taylor. He went in the first. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire went in the first. Big bust, but regardless, he did go in the first.
Yeah.
Josh Jacobs. The 2019 running back class is pretty bad. It's Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery, Darrell Henderson, and Damian Harris. Yeah, that's actually bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
We get one once every 4 or 5 years. That's for sure. Which is weird because running back, I you know what it is I think, Brendan, we're starting to maybe see now the running backs going to receiver. Like, look at this class with the receivers and how every year now that the receiver class is stacked to the 9s, and now suddenly the running back classes are getting thinner and thinner. It's probably because these guys are becoming receivers now.
Okay, this one probably not going to be much to say here because he basically didn't play in 2023. Mayan Williams of Ohio State, the Buckeyes. You familiar with him at all?
I am, yes.
Okay, he basically missed 2023. He got hurt. Previous 2 years, he was efficient, not hugely productive, but pretty good player. 17 touchdowns, had something like 1,500 yards from scrimmage. Good deal of power. He's a bit more of a power back. He's 230 at 5'8.5". So he's got a very wide body, I guess you could say. So what do you think of Mayan?
We're talking about Frank Gore Jr. If you're looking for your Frank Gore-like running style of back in this draft, here it is. This is your Frank Gore. Real gritty, inside runner. Really, he's got a low center of gravity, no doubt about that. Good forward lean, like we talked about, and Frank Gore having that. This guy's got it as well. He's got that extra weight inside to be able to kind of be a tough inside runner, even though he's a 5'8.5", because he's a bowling ball. It's kind of how I'd put it. It's everything's solid. So, he gets in there and he hammers that hole. Everything's kind of going backwards. The tackler that meets him in the hole is going backwards, and an arm tackle's kind of sliding slightly off to allow him an extra couple of yards. He's going to be a grinded out kind of guy for you, but he's also a guy that's not going to take a lot of negative yard gains to me. And that he's always going to give you something positive in that element. At the very least, could be a very nice short yardage back for you. He's missing speed. He might be even missing a little bit of burst, or it's probably at best, probably average burst, and definitely missing speed. But hard to find kind of some of these inside runners that can run this hard and get through those tackles. Like we're looking at this draft, a lot of these like 195, 205 guys that I don't think are going to be able to fight through in between the tackles in that way and still be able to churn some tough yards out. I think Mayan can do that for you. I've always had a little bit of a soft spot because I was going back even looking at him last year, Brendan, coming into the season as maybe one of those backs who would emerge. And I know he wasn't able to get it done. Got stuck behind Travian Henderson out there at Ohio State too. But I do think he provides something that's kind of unique in this draft for some of the other backs.
Yeah. I kind of like the power. I kind of like the power that he offers. I wouldn't spend too high of a pick on him. I don't think you need to, for one, because he didn't play last year, basically. Like, you could get him in the 7th. You might even be able to get him as UDFA. I wouldn't put value on him too much higher than that, though. I wouldn't go too crazy about a guy who has never been a high-volume runner and basically missed all of the most recent season.
Totally valid reasons on that. He's a guy that I have had a little bit of a soft spot for a while. So I do put him as more of a late 5th round guy to me. Because I do think that he's going to be a back whose skill set translates to the NFL level, even if he wasn't as good at the college level. But all fair points to be said about him on that.
Okay, we got 4 more guys to get through here. 4 more guys. I have Rasheen Ali, Marshall, the Thundering Herd.
The Thundering Herd.
Yeah, did not test. About average size, 206 pounds, 23 years old. Very productive, though. Ton of yards, ton of production. So what's your takeaway on Rasheen Ali?
So this is the second guy. I mentioned to you that Audric Estime was the guy that reminded me a little bit of beast mode. Rasheen Ali's another guy that reminds me a little bit of beast mode in his game. It's his steps he takes. There's something about the steps and the way that he kind of gets lateral with the steps that's very much like beast mode. It's like a pitter patter step, like beast mode would have when he'd get pitter patter going sideways a little bit. So a little bit of that with Rasheen, and really good ability to drive hard lateral. Like he can drive to the side and be breaking a tackle and doing it. There's real strength and power there. He's also a real finisher, I think, as a runner, and he will dish out punishment in finishing off runs. A little bit of burst, a little bit of long speed. I don't think he's got average in either of those respects. I don't think he's elite in either of those respects. I think it's just a little bit above average in both, though I know we don't have the testing numbers to go off of. The level of competition is going to make it hard with the evaluation of him, of course, Marshall, and what he's going up against. I wanted him to be 20 pounds heavier to the Marshawn comp, because there's a guy at 205 versus Marshawn who's probably 230, 235 back in the day when he played at. And that there is a little bit of lack of times where he's playing big and he gets in there to lay that shoulder down and he's trying to, and he just doesn't have enough sand to kind of make it happen. Not enough weight, not enough girth, not enough, that he's bringing to really cause that on the tackler at all times. And that makes me worry about it translating as necessarily as much to the NFL level, especially considering the level of competition that he was dealing with. So I think he's got some potential to be a 4th running back on the roster. I do, but I wouldn't take that risk anywhere but in the back end of the draft.
I'd say 6th round for him. I like his acceleration. I like his nose for the end zone. He's got like 40 touchdowns over the last 2 full years he's played. He missed most of 2022 with an injury, which is another problem. He's a good pass catcher, but he also doesn't really do a lot with his catches. He's kind of a check down chain mover, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I like his vision. I like his ability to line up wide. He's somebody who can line up as a receiver.
Really good vision.
I'd say 6th round. I might feel differently if he had played in 2022 and had another really productive season. I don't know. Maybe that's not totally fair, but that's about what I would say right now.
I've got the 6th, 7th rounder on him as well. I kind of classify these guys at that point about in the same place, but I'd go 6th. I'd go 6th round for him. I think that he's got that vision. I think is nice. The violence he runs with is nice and hard to find in this class a little bit. And there's just some shades there of Marshawn a little bit in his style.
Right.
It's not a Marshawn comp, just shades.
All right. Next up, we've got another small school guy here. This is Kimani Vidal of Troy. Did you take a look at the Troy product in this year's NFL draft?
I did. There's not a lot of tape with Kimani to go through because Troy doesn't have a lot of there's a little bit on YouTube. It's just not a lot. Very, very productive the past 2 years, 2,700 yards, 25 touchdowns at 5'8", 215. Another guy that's got a little extra weight on that 5'8" build and a very low center of gravity. That does give him some lower leg drive power for his size, which is excuse me, which is unique. He's got a little baby stiff arm that's very effective. He's got kind of, I think, some Porsche handling to him and his ability to weave in and out of traffic and then use his burst, and just deaccelerate, weave, get the burst back up. That 1.53 that he posted off the 4.46 40, the 1.53 10-yard split, I thought you do feel that on the field with him. That play speed is there with that burst and his get up and go. I like the extra weight a little bit on him at 215, Brendan, at 5'8". These guys will tend to be that 195 at that size, or wasn't that with Blake? What we were looking at with him with Blake Corum is he was kind of at that 205-ish, sub 200 pounds.
That
kind of
sounds right. Yeah, I think that's right.
And so he gives you feel a little bit more of that weight and just his ability to be that, like, just be sturdy on some of those runs, with him being a guy that's a kind of a get away from you kind of guy, an elusive kind of back with some sturdiness to him, I guess is how I'd put it. So average vision, he's more looking to bounce it guy and not always choosing the right times to bounce it when not to. He tends to usually pick the smart hole, but there's also those moments on film where he bounces and he should have taken the hole. So he's not always the best about reading the right hole or where to go. He's got the ability to get anywhere he wants to get on the football field, just not always the best, most natural feel.
Yeah. I like his speed and acceleration combo. I like his cuts. I think his cuts are quick and decisive. He's good around the goal line. Pretty good receiver as well. But like you said, not great vision. Instincts as a runner aren't there. I don't know. Do you think the testing might be like fool's gold? He didn't look that fast to me.
I think like some people are saying this, and I'm tending to agree with it. I'd see if you agree with this as well. I think guys are getting better at testing. I think these agents and the testing people that prep these kids for these sessions are getting really good at getting them really good at it. And it doesn't necessarily it's not as indicative always of that's what they are on the field. That's how fast they are on the field. That's how quick they are on the field. I do think his 1.53 translates. And in the 4.46, you do have a guy starting to flirt into more of that 4.5-ish territory of it. So that's also where he doesn't have necessarily that long speed. He's a quick guy and gets you beat in short spaces. So I think some of that does track, but I do think, again, to your point on this, there's some of this with these testing numbers are getting, I think, a little bit artificial to a tiny degree, and more on certain guys than others. That's for sure.
All right. So I put him in like the 6th round. I think it's worthwhile taking the gamble in the 6th round, but not before then, really. I think that's about the best that I can say for him.
I went 4th on that one.
Oh, really?
I went 4th. I think he's got NFL traits, and I think with having the size at 215 with what he put up as testing, I think that he can find it. I don't think he's a number 1 or a number 2, but as a 3 or 4 back, I think he can find a home.
All right. So to wrap us up here, I had a couple guys that are very far down on the list. They're both probably going to be UDFAs for good reason, but you've got Amani Bailey of TCU. Bailey.
Yeah.
Small, 5'7". That is probably the shortest back we've done. 202 pounds. Tested not so great. Tested kind of mediocrely. And the aggregate puts him like 50 picks away from being drafted. Actually, more like 60 or 70. Productive in 2023 for TCU, taking over for what was the running back that got drafted from TCU last year?
Kendry Miller.
Yeah. So what do you think of Bailey?
Way too slow to be that small. 5'7", 202, you're running a 4.6 and a 1.57. it's just not going to get it done. He's got a tornado spin move, which is pretty nice. A little bit of plus burst. So I think the burst is a little better than the 157 he might have tested at. But the 4.61 is legit on that. He might even be a little bit slower than that, be honest with you. He's a capable receiver. He can be useful in that way, but I don't see him as a third down back. He's below average as a pass blocker. Short arms. He's just not going to be able to block anybody. He's just missing too much size and too much speed to find a home in the NFL. I don't see a specialist role for him either, kind of for similar reasons. You're 5'7", you better be running a 4.4. And if you're not, it's troublesome. 33.5-inch vert just kind of confirms that lack of explosiveness.
Yeah. His plant and go is nice. I like how he runs with patience.
He's got good cutback ability. That plant, the cutback, and that part does stand out with him.
Yeah, but he's small, he's slow, not very explosive, fumbles a lot. He's a fumbler. And he's not going to create much beyond what is just blocked. So UDFA, I don't see anything draftable here, really.
Yeah, I've got him in the same place, basically. 7th UDFA.
Yeah, and final guy here, this is really far down the list now, Michael Wiley of the Arizona Wildcats.
Okay.
So 5'10.5", average size, decent speed, decent acceleration, okay explosiveness, no change of direction. And last year, a little bit of an oddity, he had as many receiving yards as he did rushing yards. He basically became a full-on third down back who only caught passes. So did you see anything with Michael Wiley one way or the other?
Yeah, I think the fact that he was used so much as a pass catcher gives you at least the hope that he can slide in as a third down back with at least kind of average-ish NFL size. I don't think he's as fast as the 4.5 one time in the 1.54 10-yard split. I think that those were a little bit artificial. This is a guy that definitely has a little bit artificial numbers inflated off of that. He was a touchdown maker in college. He scored on once on every 16 touches in college. So I think that does show he's got a little bit of a nose for the end zone. Really keeps his feet well on low tackles. When guys are down around and trying to take him out low, he's able to kind of work off of those and still keep his feet, still keep going forward. He can break tackles, but I wouldn't really call him a tackle breaker. He's kind of just average in that way. He does have really soft hands, great catch concentration, great tracking of the ball down the field from the running back position and what he brings. And then he dynamically goes from being a pass catcher back to being a runner really quickly. So I really do like what he shows there. And he's got a little off for the pass protector. I mean, none of these guys are lighting the world on fire in that part out of college, but I thought he was okay at times in that role with them. So I think he can definitely find a home in the NFL level as a definitely maybe still a 7th round guy to me, but could be a, maybe this year's kind of version of your Macintosh a little bit.
Yeah, I like the power he runs with, even though he's not a particularly big guy.
Yeah.
Good route runner out of the backfield, really good receiver, holds up as a pass protector. So I still went with like round 7 or UDFA because I don't know if he brings much to the table beyond just his third down back abilities, but it's there. There's something there that can exist.
Yeah. No, I think there's a little something. He's at the top of my 7th round. So like Rashina Lee and Michael Wiley are two of the guys that, I do think these are draftable guys in that 7th round range that can maybe bring you something there a little bit.
Okay. That's all I had. Did you have anybody that we didn't cover?
One last guy. And a guy that I think is an interesting guy to take a look at as far as just to track, and that's Kelontae Robinson out of Texas. So, we mentioned about Jonathan Brooks getting stuck behind the depth chart. Imagine being the 4th guy on that pecking order behind Bijan Robinson, Roschon Johnson, and Jonathan Brooks. And that's a little bit of the case with Kelontae Robinson. He tested at the combine 4.42, a 1.51 10-yard split. So very, very, very good acceleration from this guy that stands out on the field. Good as a pass catcher. He's going to go down on contact, but he's kick return, Brendan, kick return here with this guy, with that acceleration that he has. He also averaged, he had only, I think, 12 carries last year, but he put up 112 yards on those 12 carries. So when you got the opportunity to actually give him the ball, he did something with it, but again, stacked a little bit on the depth chart, but very interesting guy to watch on tape. For the little bit of usage that he did have, there's things that are missing in his game for sure, but he's got some legit speed and elusiveness and get up and get away from you kind of speed. And might be a guy that teams kind of think, hey, it's not his fault he couldn't beat out a top 10 pick or this guy or that,
Yeah. Why do you think he didn't go back to college if he was stuck behind guys? Like you'd think he'd go back now that Brooks isn't there.
Well, I mean, who's their running back right now? I mean, Texas tends to continue to spurn through running backs that are 5-star type of talents in that state over and over and over again. So who's to say there's not a Bijan Robinson-like talent waiting in the wings here this next year for Texas that he didn't have confidence in that he was going to be out and get the multitude of carries. And so if he's back to being a backup anyway next year, why not just start that clock on the NFL and get in there when you can get in there at that point?
Yeah. Okay. I can dig it. All right. So that's running backs, guys. That's the running backs. It's not a elite crew, but there's somebody there who is probably going to be a Seahawk in the future. I would expect one of the guys we talked about tonight to end up wearing a Seahawks jersey when the season starts.
I would agree with you on that. I think it's one of these guys is going to probably be picked. They may try to angle for the UDFA because there's so many that are right on that line, and that's the way you don't have to give up a draft pick and still get a back that's functional at that point, for especially as the fourth guy in the rotation. But I do expect him to take one.
Okay, so that'll do it for the show tonight. Thank you, everybody. You've been a great audience. Thank you for turning out. Brandon, thank you for coming out and doing this with me.
My pleasure, brother.
Yeah, and we're going to do this again in 2 days, and we're diving into maybe the most daunting position of them all.
That's right. The deepest, most daunting, the position with 41 players at the combine.
I'll try to get through 41, but
I'll send you the list. We ain't getting through 41, but we'll get through as many as we can.
yeah, that's well, at least I know they're going to have testing numbers because they went to the combine.
That is true. That is true. And there's some good testing numbers at that. Some really good talents. We're going from maybe one of the weakest positions in the draft to maybe the strongest position in the draft on Thursday.
So see you guys on Thursday. We'll be congregating yet again to discuss these wide receivers, get through this draft stuff. And thank you everybody once again for showing up. I will be live on Twitch later tonight. We're doing more anime watch-alongs. And look, guys, it's getting closer. I know things feel slow right now. I know that you're kind of crashing after the high from free agency, but it's coming. It's coming very quickly here. And as we move closer to this ever important draft, all you can say is go Hawks.
Go Hawks.